Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it.
All right. Happy Monday, everybody. We are back with more New Mexico versus Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. This is day 8, morning of day 8, morning in New Mexico. But, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are. I hope you're having a great Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. Very relaxing and restful. I hope so. I definitely did. I needed the rest. After traveling and then sort of jumping right into trial streaming during traveling and then in the midst of things, it was great. It was great to have a little bit of a break, which is just very nice. Caught up on some sleep and whatnot. Okay, first off, Becky Young just became a YouTube member. Thank you so much for joining Bite Club. Welcome to Bite Club. I hope you have a wonderful time here. Or welcome back to Bite Club, I should say. I see a croissant by your name. And also, Shireen gifted 5 Legalbytes memberships. Very kind of you, Shireen. So Janet G, Joanne, Michael, is it Slajek? Slajek? I'm sorry if I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. JL Straw and Ellie Beck, you have all been gifted memberships by Shireen. So welcome back to Bite Club. And thanks again, Shireen. Very, very kind of you. There's also a question here, and I'm going to I promise I'll get to testimony real quick. But I did spot this question here. And then further questions that I see in the chat, I'm going to save for a sidebar or something like that to answer. But this one right here, Pamela C, I thought they have juries away from the crime. If you live in New Mexico, aren't the chances are that you've heard about this case? There is a good chance. But generally speaking, wherever the crime occurred, you have to like expressly move to allow for the court to allow you to move to a different jurisdiction. There has to be like an overwhelming sense of prejudice against the criminal defendant for that to be the case. Because generally speaking, it's the state is representing the people, right? The prosecution is representing the people. And when somebody commits a crime, it is I don't know, like what do I want to say? Like it's against the people, right? So where the crime happens, those folks that live in that area are represented by the state. So, anyhow, I think that's it for now. I saw that there are some more questions. I'm saving those for later. We're going to jump right in because they once again started early and I want to jumping right into things. So let's get to it, shall we? Oh, and also new poll. I'll probably keep that going for a good 10, 15 minutes, something like that. And then I'll document it along with all of the others. So if you are in the chat, be sure to vote in the poll. I want to hear what you guys think. Which way are you leaning on involuntary manslaughter? Guilty, not guilty, or is it still too soon for you to say one way or another? Very curious as always about those. All right, folks. Let's get into it.
All right, you may be seated. Call your next witness.
Stand calls Karen Kuhn.
Karen, I wasn't sure I got that. Kyle Mulkey, thanks for the super chat. I feel his trial is just a setup to get Baldwin in his trial. Also, why is every witness pointing flaws before the incident but didn't say anything? I think you might be right about that first part for sure.
Law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, have a seat, talk into the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point with your second point also. A lot of people
State your
criticizing
full
that.
name for the record.
Karen Ann Kuhn,
And how do you spell your last name?
Kuehn.
How are you currently employed?
I am a stills photographer on film sets and sometimes a wrangler.
What does a stills photographer do on film sets?
We document scenes, behind the scenes, and do gallery work and specials for billboards, posters, whatever the production needs.
Okay. Were you employed as the stills photographer on the set of Rust?
Yes,
And if you recall, can you estimate for us approximately how many photographs you took during the time that you were working on Rust? Do you have any idea?
maybe 9,000,
Okay.
about 2,000 a day at the most, probably.
Okay. I am going to, well, before you came in today, did you have an opportunity to review one of the photographs that you took?
I did.
Okay. I am going to ask the court to admit States Exhibit 165. I believe there's no objection.
No objection, all right, thank you. 165 is admitted and they publish.
Yes,
Yeah, so we're going to probably see some photos of
it's off.
barrels being pointed in the wrong direction. Maybe ammo issues. What are we going to see here?
It went off again here. I can turn if you want.
No, no, you're fine. But these guys will take care of it. I'm not. I never do.
Yes.
Dawn. No,
Ma'am, do
Indy's
you
right here by my
recognize this
feet.
photo?
I do.
Can you tell us the date that this photo was taken?
I believe it was on the 15th,
Of what month?
October.
And would that have been 2021?
Yes.
And do you recognize this person here?
Yes, it's Hannah,
Okay. And who's this person here?
Alec.
And why were you taking this photo?
I just shoot a lot, and I think the behind the scenes is really interesting, what's going on. So they're having a conversation about what's about to happen. And
Okay.
that's it.
Do you know what this is in Ms. Gutierrez's hand?
It looks like the gun belt. I'm guessing for Alec.
Oh,
Okay.
don't
A
guess.
bandolier, one of those.
Okay.
I see a gun in it.
All right.
Don't guess. That's speculation.
I'm going to zoom in on this photo.
Zoom in, enhance.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes.
When you look at, well, tell us what's in that gun belt.
Ammunition and a gun.
And do you notice anything about the center primers of the ammunition that's in that belt?
One is silver and quite different from the other 3, 4.
All right. And that was October 15th, you said, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'll pass the witness.
That's all. Wow. Very, very simple, direct.
Can I leave this here? And you can use it, you can set things on it if you want, thank you.
Morning, Ms. Kuhn.
Good morning.
Is it true that you were budgeted for 5 days of work for the entire show?
Yes.
And were you ever tasked with taking any pictures of guns pointing into the camera?
Yes.
Who made you take pictures of guns pointing into the camera?
One of the junior producers, Ryan Smith, emphasized that I should get as many shots of guns pointed into the camera as possible.
Oh God.
Okay, so then you were told to do this on many occasions?
Maybe twice.
When those photos are taken of guns pointing into the camera, are they actually pointed at you, directly at you then?
When it's the gallery shoot, yes. And those guns have to be checked by the armor before, which I trusted was happening because she was nearby.
When filming in New Mexico, did it appear to you that Alec Baldwin was the boss?
Yes.
Did you ever see anybody tell Alec Baldwin no?
No.
And in terms of the structure, did it appear that other producers were below him?
Yes.
Did you see other producers on the set frequently?
Yes.
How frequently did you see other producers on set?
Pretty much every day I was there.
Were the other producers sometimes even in some of the photos that you were taking?
Yes.
You had to Photoshop them out?
No, I don't do Photoshop.
Okay. What about Gabrielle Pickle? Did it appear to you like, well, first, did you have interactions with Gabrielle Pickle?
Very little, just the initial deal.
Did it appear to you, in your perception, that the budget was a major concern to Gabrielle Pickle?
That's her job. She's the line producer, I believe. And so she has to come in according to whatever the budget is.
Okay. Do you recall believing that she was trying to be cheap, to cheap everybody down?
On the lower tier, lower budget shows, that's what they all do.
And that's what you observed from Gabrielle Pickle on this show?
I didn't get involved with her about everybody else's deal, just my deal. And I just made a deal with her and that was it.
Okay, but I'm trying to get at your perception of her and whether, in fact, I'm not sure if you're quite answering. Did you believe that she was cheap, cheap, cheap?
I
think
don't have an opinion.
Do you remember?
I think she's getting to that, what she just said right there, the cheap, cheap, cheap. I think she's getting to a statement that Miss Kuhn has made in the past, perhaps. So we might see an impeachment on this statement right here, because she just said, I don't have an opinion on it. If she's expressed previously that she had a strong opinion about it, then maybe we'll hear about it. I don't know. I should say impeachments from the defense team so far have not been the strongest. Maybe they needed the weekend to refresh themselves or to get some rest, and maybe we'll see. I don't know.
Remember testifying or making statements about your opinion of her previously where you said she was cheap?
Well, that was the nature of this show. It was a low budget tier.
Okay, and I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about your opinion about Gabrielle Pickle and whether you once believed she was cheap, cheap, cheap.
I don't recall if I said that, then I said that.
Would it refresh your memory to look at a transcript of your pretrial interview in this case?
If I said it, then
Okay.
I said it. I mean, that was the overall feeling with everybody. Everybody's always trying to get more money. That's just the way it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Were you actually
so-
in the church at the time of the shooting?
So she was able to, it looked like she had the receipt ready. She was going to show, it was either going to be an impeachment. It looked like she was going for an impeachment. And then she asked, well, I don't really remember saying that. So then she said, okay, so if, would it help if I refresh your recollection, by showing you the statement that you made, the pretrial interview that you had. And so, and so then she kind of backs and was like, I mean, if that's what I said, that's what I said. So that was a good way of like not having to go through all the steps of refreshing recollection or doing a full on impeachment, but still showing, I've got the receipts. Let's be accurate about what we're saying here in comparison to what you've said before. This is why inconsistencies can appear, and we've seen in this trial how inconsistencies in prior statements can come out and look bad. This is an example of her, kind of changing her mind while sitting on the stand. And then a good example of someone who had a prior statement that then, changed their statement, was the key, I think the key light guy, um, who he was like forthright about, like, I previously said this, the stress of the moment, et cetera, but this is actually what happened. So we've seen in this trial how you can have inconsistent statements that either are okay, like where the witness comes out looking okay, or where they look like they're kind of trying to be a little bit bendy for one side.
Shooting incident in this case?
I was.
And do you recall ever seeing Hannah Gutierrez in the church at that time?
I do not. I saw her outside.
Would you agree with me that after lunch, right before the shooting, everybody on set was rushing to get the set all up and going?
I would agree with that.
I don't believe I have any other questions for you. Thank you.
That was a much better cross-examination than she's done in the past. I think that is a symptom of she was just kind of thrown in there in the deep end.
Ms. Kuhn,
And now
I
she's
wanna
had a
ask
chance
you
to kind of
couple
catch it,
questions
maybe.
about taking photos of guns pointed at the camera. You indicated that you thought that Ms. Gutierrez had checked the gun.
I believed so.
Let me ask you, did Ms. Gutierrez check the gun in your presence?
Not that I recall.
And how many movie sets do you think you've worked on that had armorers?
Over a dozen.
In your experience, does the armorer generally check the gun in the actor's presence or the assistant director's presence?
Yes.
Did that happen in this case?
I didn't see that. I also came into the church a little bit later.
And I'm not talking about inside the church. I'm talking about with you when you were taking those photos.
Right. I just don't recall. I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to just documenting what was
Okay.
going on.
Well, would you recall if Ms. Gutierrez showed you the dummy rounds and shook them for you when she put them in
Yes.
the gun?
I would recall that, but I don't.
Okay. So is it your testimony that that did not happen?
I don't know. I don't know if she checked them. It's not my job.
She didn't check them in front of you?
No.
Okay, understood. Was Ms. Gutierrez present for those close-up shots of guns pointed at the camera?
She was nearby. We were in a very small space outside of a barn for a gallery shoot. And I asked her to check everything. And I trusted that she did that. And I was inside and working with the talent on those days. And that space is probably 20 by 30, very small. You can't have a lot of people in there.
Okay. You were asked some questions about Ms. Pickle and the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Do you generally work on movies in the state of New Mexico?
Yes.
You live in New Mexico, right?
Yes.
And are a lot of films that are made in New Mexico low budget movies?
It's a mix. It's a mix.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge about New Mexico tax incentives and how that happens with regard to different
This
tiers
feels like a
of
little bit
movies?
outside the scope here. This should have come
Not
up on
enough to talk
direct.
about, but I know
Okay.
they get a discount if they hire our local crew, which we appreciate.
Okay, of course, understood. On October 21st, 2021, when you were inside the church, and I'm talking about shortly before the incident where Ms. Hutchins was shot, were you paying close attention to Ms. Gutierrez and what she was doing?
No, I was paying attention to Alec because he was handling a gun. As I walked in the church, I thought, there's some shots happening, photographs. So I kind of went right in to get some photos of him. And then he pointed at me to get out of the way and out of his personal space.
Okay. Um, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You're excused.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Next witness.
State calls Marissa Poppel.
Oh, again.
Thank you.
Interesting. Yeah, because we heard from Miss Poppel earlier in this trial, I believe. But I wonder if it's because her name has been invoked in other people's testimony, and particularly on cross-examination. So they did reserve some witnesses for recall.
Do you
Yes,
swear or
okay.
affirm under penalty of
Yeah,
law
we
that
did
the
see her.
testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat, talking to the microphone.
Yes, she was a crime scene tech who took photos
Sorry,
on
I didn't
set.
realize we were still presenting on the screen. Well, let's leave it on for now that I've figured out what's going on. Ms. Poppel, good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for returning to answer some additional questions. I would like to show you a series of photographs, and I believe there is no objection to these photos. They are exhibits.
All right.
And the photos are going to be 166 through 173.
All right, there's no objection to their admission.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, you're admitted. You may publish.
Okay. Ms. Poppel, do you see that photograph there that's on your screen? And I'm showing you State's Exhibit 166.
Yes, I do.
What is that a photo of?
This is a photo of dummy rounds that were removed from a box that was located in the prop truck, and then they were laid out on brown paper and rephotographed.
And I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 48A. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
What is that and how does it relate to the photo that we just looked at?
these are those same rounds while they were still in the foam insert.
And are these the rounds that came out of the box that had the blue Sharpie writing on the label?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 167. Can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yes, this is a box of live rounds that were collected from PDQ.
And is one of them dissimilar than the others?
Yes, in the bottom corner, one of them has a silver primer.
Wait, this is
What about
from
this one over
PDQ?
here?
Yes.
Was that the only live round with a silver primer that you found at PDQ?
No.
I'm going to have relates to the previous photo, this one here, 167. What's 168?
These are those same rounds removed from the box and laid out.
Do you know which of these has the silver primer?
It would be one of the rounds that's by itself.
One of these over here?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the shape of the projectile, is the shape of the projectile similar to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust?
No.
Is the head stamp of the round, and in fact, let's move to State's Exhibit 169. Is that a close-up of that live round?
Yes.
Is the head stamp of this live round the same as the head stamp of the live rounds from the set of Rust?
No.
State's Exhibit 170. What are we looking at here?
These were additional rounds that were located at PDQ that had silver and color primers.
And are the head stamps the same as the live rounds found on the set of Rust?
No.
Didn't we already go over all of
State's
this?
Exhibit 171. What's this?
This is a top view of those Same live rounds located at PDQ with the silver primer.
This is starting to feel
Um,
cumulative at this
Is
point.
the projectile shape the same as the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust?
No,
The live rounds with silver primers that came from PDQ, how many did you find?
there were, I'm sorry, say that one more time.
How many live rounds at PDQ with silver primers did you discover and photograph?
10.
10 out of all of them.
Yes.
Okay. And have we looked at all of them this morning?
Yes.
States Exhibit 172. What is this?
This is the outside of a ammunition box that was located in Lieutenant Benavides' vehicle.
And based on your experience in this case, do you know what kind of ammunition that box contained?
This contained blank rounds.
Okay. And States Exhibit 173. What is this?
This is the outside of an ammunition box that was located on top of the cart.
And what kind of ammunition was inside this box?
There were blanks inside this box.
I'm going to show you what is previously entered into evidence as States Exhibit 4. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
The box that we just looked at, can you tell us where it is on the cart?
Yes, it's off to the side.
Is it this one right here?
Yes, where your cursor is.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Okay. I didn't get anything new from that direct.
Cross-examine.
Give us just 1 second.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Ms. Poppel, so you testified earlier you all found 10 live rounds, and that was in the search that occurred approximately 1 month after the shooting. Is that right?
Yes.
So again, you have no idea what happened in the month in which went by that you all weren't there to search, right?
Correct.
Now, States Exhibit 4, you testified at the end, you looked at that exhibit and told the jury where that box was on the card. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Now, it's also been your prior testimony, is it not, that you put that box back on the cart from Benavides' vehicle? Is that right?
No.
Okay. Was that box there before?
Yes.
Okay. So that wasn't one of the 2 boxes that were removed from Benavides' vehicle and put back on?
Correct. Those were placed in a brown paper bag and secured in the scene.
Okay. Your Honor, if I may approach to show some exhibit. Now, I'm going to show you first what's marked as Exhibit Q, Defense Q, and ask if you recognize that.
Yes, I recognize it.
Did you, oh, sorry, did you take that photograph?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd move Defendant's Q into evidence.
No objection to any of these.
All right, defendants, you
Thank
want to just,
Thank you, counsel. So then I will move in, Your Honor, defendants R through D as well.
R through what?
D as in David. It goes all the way through R through Z, and then A, B, B, C, C, and D.
So DD.
All right, so Q through Z, and then A, A, B, B, C, C, D, D.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, they're admitted, you may publish. You need the yellow?
So it looks like he's using an old school projector. Not bad if it works.
Okay, so this is touchscreen.
That would also explain why they had such a hard time impeaching using like the clips from the videos before,
First,
because
defendant's Q, and I want to show
real
you.
quick, sorry, I'm going to finish my sentence and then I'll shut up. But that would that could explain why they had such a hard time impeaching, or why he particularly had a hard time impeaching using like the clips from the videos and that kind of stuff before, because it seems like tech wise he's decided to go a little bit lower tech on stuff. And so, and that's fine for what he's doing, so long as if it works, right? If a projector with a printout works, then it works. The problem is then using the other side's technology. You, in my opinion, you still have to be you know, familiar enough with how they're doing things so that you can use their stuff for your case, because otherwise you're putting your client, your side, at a significant disadvantage. I mean, there were a couple cross examinations that went basically nowhere, where he really could have had a very, very strong cross examination if he just were familiar with that tech and the way that the prosecution was using that stuff. So, thoughts on that?
Show you that picture.
Move that microphone closer to you.
Oh, yeah. Ms. Poppel, defendant's Q, can you tell the jury what that photograph is?
This was a photo of dummy ammunition that was located at PDQ.
Now, when you say it was dummy ammunition, did you send these to the FBI lab?
No, we did not.
And did you actually seize those and take them to the sheriff's office?
No.
So you took a picture and you concluded they were dummies without getting lab confirmation. Is that right?
Yes.
This is from PDQ.
Okay, I want to show you next defendant's S. And what is that picture?
I believe this was I'm sorry. I believe this was the box of, you know what? I can't determine it out of context. I apologize.
Okay. But this was something you took at PDQ Props?
I couldn't determine it out of context. I apologize.
Okay. It's okay.
I
That
have
does sound
over
like
2,000 photographs, and
Sure.
mostly of ammunition. So
Defendant's T, can you tell the jury what that is?
this was the outside of the box where live rounds were located at PDQ.
PDQ is PDQ Prop and Arms. That's
Defendant's
Seth
W,
Kenny's
can you tell the
company
jury what this is?
that basically provided most of the
Could
if
you
not all of the
turn
rounds
the photo?
Sure.
on set.
Yeah, that'd be easier.
Thank you. This was boxes of ammunition that were located at PDQ.
Okay, defendant's DD, can you tell the jury what that photo is?
This was another photograph taken at PDQ.
Did you, is this in the state it was in when you,
That's a mess.
obviously when you got there for the search?
Yes.
What are those items in the back? They're yellow and green. You see at the very top right. What are those things?
I'm not sure, some form of tool.
Did you inspect that tool at all to find out what it was?
I believe that Sergeant Zook assisted with that aspect.
Were there any rounds in this picture?
As he zooms in, maybe go a little
If
lower.
you could move it up, just because my portion has
There you
lettering
go.
underneath it.
Sure, yeah.
There were rounds on the table. Yes.
So there is, and just to describe, there's rounds laying in a mix of all kinds of stuff. I don't even know what to call it. Is that clutter? Would that be a good word?
There were a large amount of items on the table.
Okay. What is the green cans? What are those?
I don't recall what the green cans were.
Okay. And what is that brown canister in the middle, or whatever that is, a box?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay, I should point this thing right here.
The black box that's there, I don't recall what it was.
Did you all pick up these and look under them? Pick up the clutter and look under it?
Yes, items were moved.
Okay. So if you found anything under it, can you tell us what that was?
Nothing located underneath it was collected by us.
Okay. What are those manuals in the top right? Did you look at those?
I don't recall what those manuals were.
Did you determine whether there was any equipment or other tools within the PDQ props?
If there were tools?
Equipment, first of all, like machines?
I don't recall there being machines. I mean, there were some miscellaneous tools.
Do you know what a reloading machine is?
I know what it is, yes.
Okay.
Zach Kennedy, how is this helping your case? Looks like her lawyer is just pointing out how disorganized the set was. This is not on set. This is at PDQ Prop and Arms, which is owned by Seth Kinney.
So I was talking about the yellow and green, and seeing those closer, does that refresh your memory as to whether you might have seen what those were?
It does not. I did not inspect those items personally.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you again defendant's W. Do you remember seeing on any of these boxes that you looked through or inspected the JS initials?
Yes, multiple boxes had JS initials.
I'm going to show you defendant's V. Ma'am, what is this picture that we're looking at?
I don't recall exactly where this picture originated from.
I'm going to show you defendant's X. Can you tell the jury what this picture is?
These are more ammo boxes that were located at PDQ.
Now, did you find any written inventory system in the paperwork that you might have inspected at this search?
I did not myself, no.
Did you determine whether there was any computerized inventory system that kind of cataloged where things were?
That I do not know.
Atheist and yes, we're still in the prosecution's case in chief.
Better turn it right side up. Defendant's V, can you tell the jury what that is?
These were more ammunition boxes located at PDQ.
Were you able to ascertain any type of system, just staring at everything, as to how these were arranged?
They seem to be arranged by ammo type.
And were they all kind of put in together? Did you ever see bags of rounds put in by boxes?
I don't recall.
Money. Thanks for becoming a member.
AA.
Welcome. Oh yeah, welcome to Bike Club.
Does that appear to be bags of rounds by boxes?
Yes.
Okay. So again, that was how it was when you took this picture at the search, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I have, let me see, Judge, just 1 second. Okay, Your Honor, I have no more questions.
Redirect.
Yeah, but again, why didn't he do that on when she was
Poppel,
originally up
when
there?
you were at PDQ, you were there pursuant to a search warrant, is that right?
Yes.
And did the search warrant let you take from that property anything you wanted to?
No, it had restrictions.
What were the restrictions of the warrant?
We were looking specifically for live ammunition, 45 caliber.
Okay. 45 caliber live ammunition.
Yes.
Okay. Did you take all of the 45 caliber live ammunition from PDQ into evidence?
Yes.
Of all of the 45 caliber live ammunition that you took from PDQ, was any of it similar to the live rounds found on the set of Rust?
No.
I'm going to show you what was marked as Defendant's Exhibit Z.
This is an example of using the other side's exhibit to your advantage.
Were all
What
of
kind of
those
holes is she gonna
boxes
pick out?
taken into evidence?
No,
Why not?
because they did not contain 45 caliber live rounds.
Do you see what I mean? So she's going right back over the images that he just went over with her, and she's pointing out the holes in what he was arguing essentially with those exhibits. He needed to do that on this with the same evidence or with the prosecution's evidence before, but he didn't, and that was a huge flaw in the defense's case. So she's going to go probably one by one and point out at least the biggest flaws here, or at least poke some holes in these exhibits.
I'm going to show you what is marked as Defendant's Exhibit AA. Do you see that?
Yes.
These bags I'm a little reluctant to call them ammunition, but what appears to be at a minimum brass casings. Were those taken into evidence?
No,
Why not?
because they were not 45 caliber live ammunition.
As you look at that photo, do you know whether they were live ammunition at all?
No, I don't believe they were.
Digital dictator. You know what I mean. Not literally poking holes.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Okay. That was effective. That was an effective
Excuse,
redirect.
Thank you.
Okay. Sidebar.
Wait. Can I have this? I need to keep moving with Mr. Bolt.
What's happening here? There was a question here. Catherine S. wanted to know, is it typical for opposing attorneys to chat quietly like that between direct and cross? Well, what they were doing was he was showing her the exhibits that he planned to admit kind of ahead of time, showing her, do you have any issue with these? I plan to admit these into evidence. So that kind of streamlines his cross-examination a little bit. And so they kind of talked a little bit, went through some stuff. And it also, for her part, it gave her a little bit of a heads up of like, okay, what am I going to need to go over and redirect? So yeah, I would say it's not uncommon. I should say, like, there's nothing wrong with it. Let's get some more questions here. Dave Beatty, and there was another someone else asked something similar. What will happen if the jury is hung? Cat Love Dreaming Peach also said, if there is a hung jury, do you think they will retry Hannah? So if there is a hung jury, they the state can choose to bring the to bring the charges again, because there's no double jeopardy that's invoked there with a hung jury. However, it's significant resources. So that's something that it has to be weighed against how much it's going to cost the state to put on a whole other trial. Is it really worth it to them to do that? I don't know.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
All right, have a seat talking to the microphone. Thank you.
And then there are other questions too that I've
Good
got
morning.
Good morning.
saved here, just so you
Ms.
guys know. If
Smith,
you've
go
asked a
ahead and state your
question,
full name for the record.
Rebecca Smith.
And Ms. Smith, in October of 2021, how were you employed?
I was employed as Key Craft Services.
Was that on the set of Rust?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury what Key Craft Services does?
Key Craft Services is basically a set mom. I show up and make sure that coffee is ready for everybody, that everybody has snacks and hydration.
oh my God, I love that
If
role.
they run out of sunscreen, if they run out of chapstick, they come to me.
I love that. I would love that role.
and- What hotel were you staying at when you were working on the set of Rust?
The Inn at Santa Fe.
And was Ms. Gutierrez also staying there?
Yes, ma'am.
During the time that the two of you were both working on the set of Rust, did you get to know her?
Know her? No. I had a chance to sit with her once or twice, but not really get to know her.
Okay. Would you say she was more of an acquaintance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Ms. Smith, were you present at the hotel the evening of October 21st, 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point that evening, did you go to Ms. Gutierrez's hotel room?
Yes.
And why did you do that?
Court and I forget what his name was, but the set steward were in her hotel room and needed to go to the store to get something and did not want to leave her alone. So they called me and asked me to come up to her room. Okay.
And did you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you stay with Ms. Gutierrez for a little while?
Yes, ma'am.
And then at some point, did you leave?
Yes.
Did anything unusual happen when you left Ms. Gutierrez's room?
Yes. She asked me if I could hold on to something for her.
Oh,
I said yes.
that's
She put
the
it in
evidence
my hand,
tampering.
And I walked out as there was a knock on the door.
And after you left the room, did you look to see what she had placed in your hand?
Yes.
And can you describe, without making any assumptions about what it was, can you just describe what you saw in your hand?
Yes. It was a clear Ziploc baggie with a green small Ziploc baggie inside. And there was powder inside the green baggie.
What color was the powder?
White.
If I want you to compare this to like a sugar packet that you
It was
would.
definitely not sugar.
No.
Okay.
Let me get my
Look like sugar.
let me get my
anyway.
question out.
Okay.
I want to have a discussion about how much was in the green
Okay.
part. And I want you to compare it to a sugar packet that you would open and put in coffee or tea.
Okay.
How many of those do you think it was?
Maybe 4 or 5.
Okay. And Ms. Smith, how old are you?
I'm 51.
And when you were a younger person, did you have an opportunity to use the drug cocaine?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a recovering addict.
Are you familiar with what cocaine looks like?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the way that cocaine is packaged?
Yes, ma'am.
Based on that experience, what did you believe to be in the bag?
I believed it to be cocaine.
And
Real quick, Shireen, drugs on set proven. However, I will say that keep in mind, this exchange happened at the hotel, not on set. So that might be an important thing for folks. It might not. Also, Debbie Faison Uncooked, thanks so much for gifting a Legalbytes membership. Amanda, you have been gifted a membership by Debbie. So welcome back to Bite Club. And Debbie, thanks so much. Very kind and generous of you. And you just gifted another one. What in the world? Thanks so much. Who got it now? Howie K was gifted a membership. So welcome or welcome back to Bite Club, Howie K and Debbie. Thank you so much. All right.
And what did you do with it?
I threw it in the hallway trash can before even going downstairs to my hotel room.
Ooh.
And why did you throw it in the hallway trash can?
Because like I said, I am a recovering addict. I
Yeah.
can't first and foremost have it in my possession. And second, I was really very offended and I didn't want anything to do with the situation anymore.
Okay. After October 21st passes, did you receive any text message communications from Ms. Gutierrez?
Yes.
And-
Several.
And generally speaking, what was the theme of those messages?
I want my stuff back.
Other than the bag containing the green bag containing the white powder, other than that item, did you have anything else that belonged to Ms. Gutierrez?
No, ma'am.
Did you bring this information to the attention of law enforcement?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Like I said, I didn't want to be involved in the situation if I didn't have to be.
Okay. And how long after the incident do you think it was before someone reached out to you to talk to you about this?
I believe it was about September of 2023 when you contacted me about it.
And I personally called you?
Yes, ma'am. Texted, I believe it was.
Okay. And did you tell me on that day what you have testified to today?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
Oh boy. Okay, cross-examination. Let me get some questions really quick. Okay, let's see here. KM, not about this case, but whatever happened to the Evan Rachel Woods versus Marilyn Manson case? That one kind of got put on ice because of an anti-slap motion that was filed, and then it got appealed and all kind of stuff. So it's been a minute since I looked into the case, but I can definitely look into it. Suki London, question: do you think prosecutor is reading SM reaction to the trial so far? Lots of questions about Seth and PDQ's role. Maybe she's getting out ahead of what's coming. I mean, you mean in terms of like looking online and on like streams like this one and other like forums and stuff? It would not surprise me. I have covered a number of cases, whether live streaming the trial or covering a topic, and been surprised when someone from one of the legal teams or PR teams or something like that has decided to contact me, to either to talk to me or to give me information or things like that. Generally speaking, it's never resulted in like giving me exclusive information. But it has confirmed for me that a lot of these teams have someone looking online to see what the reactions are, whether it's my channel or other people's channels or Law and Crime or some of these bigger networks. I imagine someone is watching for various reactions. Vertice Gerfield, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is this a hired attorney or someone court appointed? Not court appointed as far as I understand. However, I do believe that he is working pro bono, meaning he's working for free, mostly for the experience and for the exposure for his firm. My understanding is he has not done much if any criminal defense work, but he's done quite a bit of litigation and trial stuff. Tracker QST3, will the defense call Seth? I think that the prosecution is likely to call Seth, but if they don't, I would definitely imagine that the defense would. Atheist Ant wants to know, would tossing the illegal substance turn her assumption of what it was into hearsay? No. So first off, I don't think that she made an assumption to her conclusion. She had logical steps for concluding what she thought it was. And hearsay, remember, hearsay is an out of court statement offered at trial to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So there was no, I mean, there were a couple of statements here, but the statement was, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed saying, "Hey, can you hold on to this for me?" And then there was, but that's going to this witness's impression or her state of mind as to what was happening there. And then there's the text messages afterwards following up with Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, asking, where's my stuff? I need to get my stuff, like that kind of thing. Again, probably more offered for her state of mind as to like what's going on and whatnot. So yeah. Okay, we got those questions. Let's continue with cross.
Thank you, Honor. Ms. Smith, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, ma'am, that night when you went to Miss Gutierrez-Reed hotel room, you were called over and Miss Gutierrez-Reed was distraught, correct?
Yes.
Now, you were called over and there were, you could see she was visibly distraught, couldn't you?
Yes.
And didn't you say that you would stay with her that night and make sure she was okay?
I said I would stay with her for a little bit, yes, until court and the steward came back.
Okay. And at the time you left, had they gotten back?
No.
So before they got back, despite your word earlier, you left.
Yes.
Did Miss Gutierrez-Reed also go to your room that night?
No.
Now, your testimony is that the last time you used cocaine was approximately 20 years old. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So that would have been, I think, 31 years ago.
Yes.
And since then, thankfully, you've been clean. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you have not seen that substance in 31 years. That's fair to say?
No, that's not fair to say.
Okay.
I have seen it, just not used it.
Okay. Now, you stated on direct examination that you believed it to be cocaine.
Yes.
And do you recall stating at one point that you said it could be cocaine or meth?
I don't recall saying that, no.
Okay, do you recall at your pretrial interview being asked the question, what was in those baggies? Inside the snack baggie was the green baggie. Inside the green baggie was a white powdery substance, which I knew to be cocaine, or I mean, it could have been meth or something too.
It could have,
Okay.
but I don't believe that it was, nor did I state that I believed it was. I just said that it could be.
And that was my question. I'm just asking if you said it could have been meth too.
Correct.
So in reality, it could have been a number of other white powders. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Do you know what creatine looks like?
No.
Protein powder?
Yes, because I work in craft services.
Okay. And we could go through a whole list of items, but there's a lot of white powder sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. So the reality is you have a belief, but you don't know for certain what was in that bag, do you?
Correct.
Now that was never tested
No.
and that was never provided to law enforcement.
No.
How long did you hold that baggie before you threw it in the trash?
I didn't make it all the way down the hallway.
So how many feet do you think that was that you walked?
I don't even know how many feet the hallway is long. So,
Can you look at the courtroom and estimate, just telling us?
Possibly to the distance of the gentleman in the blue suit.
Okay, is he seated
Right
at counsel
here,
table?
yes.
So would you agree with me that's about 20, 25 feet?
Sure.
Okay. So you walked 20, 25 feet, and were you looking at that bag the whole time, or were you having it down by your side?
At first, it was down by my side, and then I, of course, raised my hand to look.
Okay, now weren't you walking past some police officers too?
Men in uniform, not sure whether they were police officers.
Well, what do the uniforms look like?
They could have been armed security. I did not see an actual badge, so I could not say. for sure that they were police. They were men in uniform in either security or police.
Well, do you recall being asked the question, why didn't you just hand it back to her? And you said, because I didn't want to do anything in front of the police, on page 19 of your interview?
Yes,
So at that time at your interview, you indicated they were police.
I indicated that I believed that they were police. Yes.
No, you didn't say believe. You said, because I didn't want to do anything in front of the police. So were they police or not?
I don't know.
So you walk down 25 feet, you look up at it, and then you throw it in the trash. Is that right?
I looked at it and then waited for the trash can, of course. I didn't throw it on the floor or anything. So I did have to wait for the trash can to be there.
Sure. So you, in fairness, you probably had 5 seconds to look at this bag. Is that about right?
Yes.
So you had a 5-second glance through a white baggie and a green baggie, and you then based your conclusion on that. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you also said that you thought this was about 4 to 5 sugar packets.
Correct.
Okay. Well, do you recall previously stating that this, you didn't know what the weight was?
Correct.
And do you recall indicating that it could be a couple of pounds?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, do you recall being asked question, so you have no experience with weight, and you testify, well, I don't know what it weighed. I mean, could be an 8-ball, but I don't even know what an 8-ball weighs. So, I mean, that's like asking me how much this weighs. I don't know. It's a couple of pounds. You want to see this?
No, I don't need to see it. What I
Okay.
was referring to was a body armor that I had already opened and taken a couple of drinks of. And I held it up and said, I don't know what this weighs. Maybe a pound or 2. That was in reference to the body armor, not to the baggies.
Okay. Well, in reality, in a 5-second glance, would you agree with me? You have no idea what the weight was.
Correct.
Okay. And you really, other than your guess, you have no idea for certain what was in that bag.
Correct.
New poll, this one on evidence tampering.
Then may I just have one moment?
Very curious to see your guys' opinions on this one, because I think
Last
she's
question. Do you recall in those text messages between you and Miss Gutierrez-Reed, she at one point asked you back for her things, plural?
Yes.
Okay. And so things is more than one, right?
Yes.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Incorrect.
I think that was a good.
Smith.
Hang on, let
Have
me
you
just say this. I think that was a good cross. I think he did a good job of pointing out, like, hey, look, no one ever tested this. How do you know? How do you know for sure that this wasn't? Well, I mean, meth is maybe not the best thing because it's kind of the same sort of implications as cocaine, because it means that she's potentially working while impaired. So there's that. However, at the same time, for me personally, I don't know that although he gets points for a good cross-examination, I don't know that it's ultimately going to do much, at least for me personally, because I look at the overall context and I'm like, yeah, creatine looks like, it is a very, very soft, white, powdery substance, like that can definitely look very questionable. However, the consequences of someone throwing away a bag of creatine is like nothing. Creatine is not expensive at all. Same thing with whey protein. So, so it's like, someone would not necessarily be quite so upset about not getting that back from someone weeks later. It would be a very strange thing for her to be, obsessed with like getting a bag of creatine back. So given the context, I'm not so sure that I'm ultimately convinced that that was not cocaine. But props to the defense for a good cross examination, for poking the holes that he could possibly poke, and showing to the jury that there are aspects of this that she doesn't know for certain. All
Have
right.
you ever seen powdered sugar packaged like that?
Never,
Have you ever seen regular sugar packaged like that?
never.
Have you seen cocaine packaged like that?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about your contact with Ms. Gutierrez inside the room. Did you, when you were in there, in Ms. Gutierrez's room visiting with her, did you speak with her?
Yes.
Did she mention to you that she was extremely worried about Ms. Hutchins and Ms. Hutchins' death?
No, ma'am.
What specifically did she say to you when you were in her room with regard to any concerns that she had?
She was concerned about her career. She was concerned about being prosecuted because somebody got shot.
All right. Nothing further. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ask one more question.
Oh,
Can we approach real quick?
Yes.
there you go. Sidebars, not snide bars. Yeah, well, IR Potato Brain, I responded in the chat, but the chance of having creatine in a Ziploc bag is low. However, keep in mind she was supposed to be there for like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you are taking creatine supplements and you don't want to take the ginormous thing of creatine, I've done this. I'm traveling with it. You don't want to travel with the ginormous thing, so you take it in some sort of smaller package. There are other ways of taking it in than
Ma'am, you were
just the powder.
the
There's
one that
pills too,
told
but
Ms.
still.
Gutierrez-Reed that night that Halyna had passed, correct?
Yes.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Your excuse.
Okay.
Next witness.
Let me look at the list. Give me just 1 second. State will call Seth Kenny.
Oh, there he is, Seth Kenny.
Can you approach, Your Honor?
Directions.
All rise.
Okay, ending the poll here on the evidence tampering charge. 50% say not guilty, 49% say guilty. So that one's pretty split down the middle. Granted, only 209 votes, but that one could end up with a hung jury on that. There might be some people that are like, that's not enough for me to convict on that. This is going to be a very interesting direct and cross-examination. All right, let's fast forward a little bit here. Oh, okay. So we've got a more lengthy sidebar here, it looks like. Okay. Are there other questions too no, we don't have any more questions. Let's see here. Draco Amy live. Who are the two with the laptops back there? They could be journalists. They might be live tweeting. Okay, here we go.
Stand before the judge and raise your hand.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, have a seat, talk into the microphone. Thank you.
The boogeyman himself.
Good morning, sir. State your full name for the record, please.
Good morning, Seth Andrew Kenny.
Mr. Kenny, where to begin? In October of 2021, what kind of business did you run?
I ran a prop and weapons supply house to the film
Past
and
tense?
entertainment industry. Could be anything from theater, and also volunteer work associated with active shooter training.
Okay. Wait, would you move that microphone a little closer
Sure.
to you there?
Yep.
If you can. All right. And do you still have that business?
I do.
How did you get into the prop?
He's understandably
supply
nervous.
Business?
I got contacted in about 2009. Had previously been consulting for a firearms business, indoor shooting range, and retail segment, as well as some law enforcement training. So there was a crossover. And from that, I met an individual that was working in the film industry. And at some point, he said he needed some help, and it was just going to be a 2-month thing. Turned into 15 years.
Okay. And that individual, what kind of work did that individual do?
He did a similar thing where he set up weapons, sent them out onto shows, and also worked as an armor on set.
Okay. So how long have you owned PDQ props?
It's been about 12 years, maybe 13.
Okay. And at some point, sir, did you meet a gentleman by the name of Thel Reed?
I did very briefly. Oh, I was aware of Thel Reed because we were on opposite ends. He was working set on Django Unchained, and I was behind the scenes working with the prop master, preparing the weapons that were going to be used by cast. So I was aware of him then. And then very briefly one day, a prop master brought him into the LA Prop House Arsenal, where I did actually meet him. It wasn't again until about 2018 where we became friends.
Okay. So when the two of you became friends, what did Thel do for a living, and how did it relate to what you did?
Well, primarily he's more than anything, he's a gun coach, and he does work set as an armor as well. But something that he's unrivaled in is as being a gun coach. As an armor, he does a fantastic job, or he did back in the day. So he would work set, and on the back end, I would prepare the weapons. For the most part, I work set as little as possible.
Okay. When you say work set, what do you mean?
Actually ending up on a call sheet, being hired by a film production. It could be episodics. It could be any TV show that you might see. Walking Dead, for instance, and then, or it could just be a feature film, like Django Unchained. And so when you are hired by production, you end up being an employee or an independent consultant for that production.
Okay. So working on set was not your thing.
Definitely not my focus.
Okay. And what, at some point in time, did you and Mr. Reed work on a film together where Mr. Reed was an armorer or a coach and you were the vendor, the supplier?
That was it was 1883. It wasn't a feature film. It was more of a one run episodic. And I had been working with Taylor Sheridan's prop master.
And who's Taylor Sheridan?
Taylor Sheridan is a writer director of the Paramount production, and he's kind of created his own segment of Americana that's very popular.
Are you talking about Yellowstone and 1883?
Yellowstone 1883, Yellowstone 1923, Mayor of Kingstown, Sicario. He wrote Sicario, both, I believe. Wind River, amazing movie.
Okay.
That was actually the first
Agreed.
time
That was an amazing movie.
I had been a provider consultant for Taylor Sheridan, was on Wind River.
Okay. Let's jump back to 1883. Describe for the jury, please, how you and Mr. Reed sort of worked together on that series.
Well, I had to push hard to get him onto the crew and hired. And so we talked about it, and I'm fairly tight with a prop master. You know, again, we've been working together since Wind River. And I convinced him to hire Thale, and to keep him on longer than most gun coaches or older persons would be allowed on set. You know, frankly, the Texas heat was just too much for him. So
And
That's an interesting thing to add, a little detail to add is the fact that he says he had to work really hard to get Thel Reed hired onto set and hired. Um, that stands in contradiction to the statement that Hannah gave when she was like, "Yeah, my dad basically is the industry." So it's a different kind of perspective, and hey, they're gonna have different perspectives on Thel Reed and his career and all that kind of stuff.
and just so that everyone knows, approximately how old is Mr. Reed now?
exactly, I don't know, but he's got to be pushing 80.
Okay. So in what capacity was Mr. Reed hired on the set of 1883? Was he a coach or an armorer?
Primarily, he was the gun coach, and he had difficulty with the Texas heat. So, you know, I was constantly making sure that he was in an air conditioned environment, and that's not something that a set on Texas allows for.
Sure. So describe for the jury the kind of gun coaching that was being done on 1883.
Well, it involved initially. It was pretty casual, and we were using replicas, and it happened to be Taylor Sheridan's private arena.
When you
Yeah.
say replicas, are you talking about real guns or fake guns?
These are fake. These are fake guns,
Okay.
replicas. Yeah, and so that's where it started. It's kind of a meet and greet, and just get some of the basics down. And Thale, you know, he's been doing it for so many decades, 60 plus years as a gun coach and armor. He knows small bite-sized pieces to the actors is best.
Hey, that's what I like to
Okay.
say.
So
Was there coaching sessions that included real firearms?
there were. Then at some point, it was decided, and I'm not sure who made that decision, that they actually wanted to set up a private range on a portion of Taylor Sheridan's private ranch, with an appropriate backstop and it controls. And that is where the cast, it was a bit of a team building as well, learned about the how the functioning of the firearms, you know, and we were mixed between blanks and live. We had live ammunition in one area, and then take people off to the side and shoot blanks. And essentially, the safe distance on most blanks is about 20 feet. So we would take them away from the firing line and test and train them there. And primarily, they had gotten it by that point. They had really understood for their characters what they needed to be and do
Oh, sorry.
on set.
Really quick. Nomad Purple, this isn't the Rust set, so it's not relevant. I'm going to push back on that a little bit though, because this is the defense has made a really big deal about Seth Kenny bringing the live rounds from the set of 1883, that they confirmed they had live rounds there. He brought them from there, just dumped them on the Rust set, and that was it. So what they're doing is going through the explanation of like how they had live rounds, you know, anywhere near the set of 1883. What was the purpose? What were they doing? And he's also kind of going through sort of the safety standards that they had on set at 1883. You know, how they were separate, how, you know, the blanks had to have, you know, sort of a particular range of space, you know, for safety, et cetera, et cetera. So this is it is relevant in that the defense has really brought in this question of like what was going on that other set, how in the world, like how do we explain those live rounds making it onto the Rust set, or from the prosecution's point of view, how do we explain how they ended up being separated from the, or excluded from the rust set?
So you mentioned that during these coaching sessions, some of the cast was shooting with live ammunition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you recall what kind of caliber weapons the cast was using to shoot that live ammunition from?
It was a mix we had available from memory, 12 gauge birdshot, just the basics of that. I don't think we even touched that ammo. The prop master had some guns that were chambered in 357, I believe, some lever actions, and also in 45 Colt or 45 long Colt. Both are okay.
All
Both
right.
terms.
Can you explain to the jury? Well, let me ask you this. Do you know where the live ammunition came from that was used in those coaching sessions?
I do.
Where did it come from?
The 45 long Colt came from Thale. He had a number of reloads that I asked him to bring because at that time it was very difficult to source live ammunition. It was difficult. So he had what turned out to be 325 reloads of 45 long Colt.
And when you say reload, what are you talking about?
Well, it's once used case. So every case of ammunition starts out as new. And at that point,
What do you mean when you say case?
the actual brass case. So we talk about a round of ammunition. There are 4 components to that. There's the yellowish colored brass case, the primer that is pressed into the base of the case. Then we have gunpowder, some type of, could be black powder, synthetic black powder, modern smokeless powder, and then you need a projectile. And so those four components make up a single round of ammunition.
Okay, so the live ammunition that was used for the coaching session was provided by Mr. Reed.
Correct.
And if you know, I don't know if you do you know where he got it?
Yes, he said he got it from Joe Swanson.
Okay, and who's Joe Swanson?
Joe Swanson is probably the primary supplier of blanks and dummy rounds to worldwide. If you happen to see something go bang in a puff of smoke in a movie or an episodic, a television show, worldwide, chances are that Joe Swanson made it.
Okay. Now, was all of the 45 long Colt live ammunition that was used for the training camp on 1883, was it all used up?
No.
So can you tell us approximately how much was left over?
It was, if memory serves me correct, it was about 125 rounds, roughly.
And what happened to that ammunition after you finished training the actors on 1883?
Well, that's a little bit hazy. At one point, I do recall that certain things were offloaded from my Sprinter van because they just weren't needed, and that was one of those things. But at some point, it got moved back to Albuquerque, and I've never been able to pinpoint the date.
The live ammunition was moved back to Albuquerque?
Correct.
And specifically, where in Albuquerque was it being housed?
It was in a gray bin marked live ammunition, and it was actually in the bathroom.
Of where?
Of PDQ's location in Albuquerque.
Of your business?
Correct.
Okay. And can you explain to the jury how you would keep, how did you know it was live, and how were you able to keep it separate from dummies and blanks?
Well, it's obviously, it's a concern anytime you've got these things in, let's just say, one structure. And in this instance, always better to keep live ammunition near blanks rather than dummy rounds, because dummy rounds and live ammunition can look exactly the same. So if I were to set aside a single blank and a piece of in a round, single round of live ammunition, it would be obvious which is which just from looking at it. Okay. The same cannot be said for live ammunition. So these are things that should never be next to each other.
Did you keep all of the 45 long Colt live ammunition in the gray bin?
It was in the gray bin, and it was marked on two sides live ammunition.
Did you have 45 long Colt live ammunition stored anywhere other than the gray bin at PDQ in Albuquerque?
No.
And do you recall a search warrant being executed at PDQ?
I do.
And when the search warrant was executed, were you present?
I was.
Did you aid the police?
Absolutely.
And did you provide law enforcement all of the 45 Colt live ammunition that you had at PDQ?
Yes, and it wasn't spelled out in the warrant that way. If my memory serves me correct, the warrant specified that any live.
Yeah, and it's okay. We'll move on from that. I understand your concerns. So let's not talk about the warrant, okay? Was there another show that you and Mr. Reed both supplied firearms and ammunition to after 1883?
No.
So
not that I recall.
let me, did you supply firearms or, and when I say ammunition, I apologize, I mean blanks and dummies, to the set of a movie called The Old Way?
Yes, but that was filming concurrently with 1883.
Okay, they were happening at the same time.
Yes.
All right. So what did you
Wait,
provide?
excuse me. Wait, actually, sorry. Now that I think about it, actually, Hannah was wrapping The Old Way, and we were still in pre-production at that point. I don't think we had gone to camera yet.
On 1883?
Yeah, I remember being in Texas at the time when Hannah was wrapping out The Old Way, which is essentially concluding filming. No more camera work at all, right? She's packing up her guns. She's packing up her bags
Okay.
to leave Livingston, Montana. And we were still prepping to go to camera, but working for production on 1883.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
Real quick here, there was a question here about the objection, right? So what was that, Alita? I understand your concerns to the defense. I think that what she's saying is she's withdrawing the question and moving on in a different direction. So she knew what he was objecting to. The answer that she got was probably not exactly what she expected or what she was hoping for. And so because of that, she understood. She was like, withdrawing her question. So yeah, that was not the worst interactions between the two that we've seen. Okay.
you indicated that Hannah was involved in the movie The Old Way. Can you explain to the jury in what capacity was she working on that film?
Well, it was her first solo lead as head armor, and Thale got in touch with me and said that.
Hang on, I don't want any hearsay.
Okay.
So she was the lead armor, and that was the first movie she was lead armor on.
Correct.
Okay. Explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you supplied to the set of The Old Way.
Roughly half the guns, most of them the long arms, which are lever actions, and shotguns, and single shot rifles as well. And then there was a mix of about 50% 50% Thale, 50% PDQ supplied the blanks. I supplied 14 rounds of 38-40 dummy rounds, and Thale and Hannah supplied the balance of the dummy rounds.
Okay, so you supplied the only dummies that you supplied to the old way were caliber 38-40.
Correct.
Did you supply any 45 long Colt dummy rounds to the set of the old way?
No, I didn't have any.
And you only supplied 14 38-40 dummies?
It's all I had. Yeah.
Okay. And it's your understanding that Mr. Reed and Ms. Gutierrez supplied the remaining dummy rounds to that show?
Yes.
The dummy rounds that Ms. Gutierrez supplied to the set of the old way, if you know, do you know where she got them?
She got them from Thale.
All right. Do you source a lot of your ammunition from Mr. Swanson?
100%. Actually, no, excuse me, 90%.
And do you source from Mr. Swanson?
And again, not ammunition. just
Understood.
Dummy rounds and blanks.
Okay. Do you source both dummy rounds and blanks from Mr. Swanson?
Dummy rounds 100% from Joe Swanson.
Okay. I think we should look at some pictures if we can get set up. Mr. Bowles, will you have a look at something with me? I don't want it to be displayed yet. So here's just so that you know what I'm going to show. These are already in evidence. So he and I are going to go through them. Sorry, thank you.
All right. Moment for some tech again. Mads Risberg. How long is the trial set to run? It's supposed to go until March 8th. It could go a little bit longer if the two sides end up taking longer with testimony. These things can always be flexible with trials because, you know, things come up sometimes that you don't anticipate. Sometimes a lawyer decides to request to withdraw and another one steps in partway through trial, like what we had here. But sometimes witness testimony takes longer. Sometimes you got to recall people. There's all kinds of things that can happen, but it does seem to be expected that it should end on March 8th. So from what we've heard, there's no guarantee, but the parties do expect to be able to end on the 8th. Sion, Hannah is a human being and has undoubtedly suffered greatly from social media criticism, etc. Has she already been punished enough? That's for the jury to decide. Well, although they would not have seen the social media criticism of her. But that's a kind of a separate question, right? Is there's a court of public opinion and there's a court of law.
Thank you. Mr. Kinney, do you see the photograph on your screen?
I do.
Thank you. Have you ever had a box of dummies from Mr. Swanson with that label?
No, never.
And why would you not have a box with this label if you're sourcing your dummy rounds from Mr. Swanson?
Well, 1883 was the first period show that that I needed 45 long Colt dummy rounds for. Prior to that, even though we had done a flashback scene with Tim McGraw in Yellowstone, there was no call for dummy rounds, or the prop master sourced them elsewhere. So I just never needed them. And when I did, I needed them by the thousands, not by boxes of 50. And so what happened is Joe Swanson, he asked me, do you want me to package them up? I said, no, there's no point. Right? It's more work for everybody. So he sent them to me in bulk.
Okay. And so you never had anything like this in your possession?
Never.
And let's talk about the dummy rounds that you provided to the set of Rust. Did you provide 45 long Colt dummy rounds to the set of Rust?
I did. I supplied a single box of 50 on October 12th.
And where did those dummy rounds come from?
They had just come off of the day prior from the prop truck in Texas from 1883.
So when you took the dummy rounds that you supplied to the set of Rust from the prop truck on 1883, walk us through what you did with them.
So the Sarah and Hannah had issues with a couple of guns, and so potentially they needed replacements. There was an issue with the reassembly after cleaning. So I pulled some of PDQ's inventory from the 1883 prop truck to make sure that I had something to replace. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a 45 long Colt chambered gun that matched what they had on Rust, but I did find one chambered in 4440. So I took that gun, a box of 4440 dummy rounds, and also spotted some antiqued 45 long Colt dummy rounds in bulk, and put them literally into a double bag of some type of grocery store bag. And those three items went into my Sprinter van, and I drove straight from that set to my PDQ's location in Albuquerque.
And when you got to the PDQ location in Albuquerque, what did you do with the 45 long Colt dummy rounds that you brought from 1883?
It's kind of an odd thing to say, but because there were probably a considerable amount of money in firearms in the van at the time that were headed back to California, I slept in the van with the guns behind closed gates, but that's just what you have to do. So it wasn't until the morning of the 12th that they were brought into the my place, PDQ's location in Albuquerque.
Okay, and what did you do with them when you brought them inside?
Well, I got rid of the grocery bags straight away, and I built a small brown cardboard box, and they got poured into there. Sarah Zachary was running late. And when she showed up, I was able to reassemble and test the gun.
And let me stop you real quick, just so that we're connecting all the dots. Why was Sarah Zachary coming to PDQ on October 12th?
Well, she needed to find out whether or not I could quickly reassemble the gun without issue and make sure that it was ready to be used on camera for Rust.
And were you able to do that?
I was.
Okay.
But she ended up running probably 3 hours late, and I had nothing else to do. Essentially, I was just waiting to meet with her and drive to California. So while I was sitting there doing nothing, I looked at these overly antiqued rounds that had been dipped in a chemical that patinaed not only the lead bullets, but also the cases very heavily, too heavily. And they didn't look right. They didn't look right for camera. So I just sat there and decided, well, I'll just see what it looks like after I polish them up with some Quado steel wool. And that's what I did. what I realized though too is that some of the chemicals seem to have leaked into the case, and some of the rattles seem muddy. And
What do you mean when you say some of the rattles seemed muddy?
well, Joe Swanson for the most part stopped using BBs inside the dummy rounds because the sound guys could hear them on camera. So if the gun is being manipulated, he could actually hear the dummy rounds rattling around. And there's a number of instances where I can hear dummy rounds in TV and movies, where I can spot it, and I'm like, oh, you can hear the dummy rounds rattling. It's kind of interesting. So he switched to using a single piece of number 2 lead shot, which is an adequate rattle, but it's a little bit muffled. And I suspect what had happened is the chemical had caused some kind of gooey layer, to my best guess. And so I noticed that they just didn't sound safe to me. They just didn't sound like I wanted, Hannah and Sarah to have to be dealing with something that seems odd. And so I selected, before I sat there and polished each dummy round, I had to make sure, one, it rattled before I spent a minute polishing the round. If we're talking about a box of 50 plus writing a label on both ends, I sat there with this box for an hour. So they got rattled before they got polished, and then re-rattled to make sure they would rattle without issue, and then individually inserted into the box.
Okay, hang on just a second.
Jerry Rosser, Zach was there to oversee the gun regarding assembling versus the actual armor. Is that weird to anyone else? Yeah, it's weird. It is weird. She was not a gun expert. She was not particularly not familiar with these guns anyway.
Mr. Kinney, I'm going to show you what has previously been entered into evidence as Defendant's Exhibit L43. I'm not going to switch over to the Elmo for this because it requires too many steps and it'll take too long. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is this a photo of?
It's a photo of the brown cardboard box that I had just taped up to purposely hold those aged dummy rounds. And you can see in the picture what they look like before being polished with Quado steel wool.
Okay. I am going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 174. There's no objection to admitting this into evidence, and I'd like to publish.
All right, States 174 is admitted, you may publish.
Mr. Kinney, what is this a photo of?
That's the same box. Just it's missing I think I saw some spent blank cases in the box, as well as the Quado steel wool.
Okay. So when did you take this photograph?
I don't recall.
Is this a photograph of the dummy rounds that you provided to the set of Rust?
That's correct. So it would have to be the picture was either taken on October 12th or after.
Okay.
Because that box and those dummy rounds didn't exist until that morning of October 12th.
Okay. And after I think you indicated that you rattled them, polished them, and rattled them again. Is that right?
Correct.
And how did you provide them to the set of Rust? Were they in a bag? Were they in a box?
They were in a white box with white gaffer tape, which is kind of a pattern tape, very strong. And I hand wrote in blue Sharpie ink on both ends of the box what the contents of it were.
All right, I'm going to show you what has been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 48. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What's that?
That is the box of dummy rounds that I supplied to Sarah Zachary on October 12th.
So the dummy rounds that we saw in the box, in the brown box in the previous photo, you took those and you put them into this box.
What we see in the brown box with the age dummy rounds is the remainder, because again, I didn't just take 50 rounds. I took, I would estimate, up to nearly 100 in total. So this is a box that contained 50 dummy rounds, aged and polished, and the remainder was left in that brown cardboard box.
When you're talking about the remainder, are you talking about what's shown in Defendant's Exhibit L43?
Yes.
And the other photo of the brown box without the steel wool, are those the ones that actually ended up in the box and went to rust?
No, those are still the remainder.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 48A. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What's that?
It appears to be that same, the foam insert and dummy rounds, the polished antique dummy rounds that I gave to Sarah Zachary on October 12th. Although
Yeah.
one of them appears like it doesn't belong.
You talking about this one?
I believe it to be that round. It doesn't look like it's had any aging. And I think I've seen it in other evidence photos where they're laid on their side and it stands out.
So, and hang on just a second. Let's do this. Let me show you what has been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 166. What's the round you're talking about?
That's it. If we look at the top row and all the way to the right of the top row, just beneath that, it appears that round is inconsistent.
Circle.
Yeah, so it's touchscreen.
Oh, yeah.
So you can, you have to press a little bit.
I don't have the touch. So that round that I've circled in red does not appear like the others. And I have a tough time thinking that I would provided that round.
Okay. And after you gave the box to Ms. Zachary and it was taken to the set of rust, do you know what was done with it after that?
No, even if she left it in her car, I had no idea what she had done with it.
Okay.
Whether or not they used it or not.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 39. Do you recognize that?
I've seen this photo before, yes.
Do you recognize the dummy rounds that appear to be in the belt? Is it hard to tell from this photo?
It's hard to tell, yeah.
Okay, so let's
and the shadows in the photos make it difficult as well.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move to State's Exhibit 40. This is previously entered into evidence. Does that photo help?
It does.
So I believe we've heard testimony that these are from the crime scene specialist, that these are the rounds that were taken out of the belt. Do those look like your rounds?
They do. They're definitely similar. A higher resolution on an iPad would be ideal, but they look very similar. Can I guarantee that those are the PDQ rounds? No, it would be difficult to say. Casually, yes. Court of law, not so
Okay.
much.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 49. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you see that this photograph has an extra round up here?
I do.
Are you familiar with what a Denix round is?
I am.
What's a Denix round?
Well, it's a costume round.
What's the difference between a costume round and a dummy round?
Costume rounds don't rattle. First off, the Denix round that I've found, that I've tested, won't chamber in a gun either. The cast manufacturing seam is out of spec, so even though it says 45 Colt or 45 long Colt on the end of it, you actually can't get it to chamber.
Hang on just a second. When you said the cast manufacturing seam, can you see that in the photo?
I can. Yep. I'm gonna go ahead and underline it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Have you ever had Denix rounds in your inventory?
No, because it's something that if it doesn't rattle and it's coming from a weapon supplier, a vendor, it sets a dangerous precedent that we can say some dummy rounds don't rattle. And there is definitely debate regarding this point. PDQ though, and I have never sent out any dummy round that doesn't rattle, whether or not the primer has been struck by a firing pin. So even if we're talking about, well, we can assume that because the firing pin has hit the primer, it must be a dummy round and there's nothing in it. And that is definitely not the case. Primers will not go off with just one hit of a firing pin. And so we don't know that that's a purpose-built dummy round. Unless it rattles, it's not to be trusted.
Okay. And did you provide a Denix round to the set of rest?
No.
And it's your testimony that the Denix rounds actually don't really fit in the revolver. Is that right?
The ones that I've tested do not.
Okay. Because of the seam.
Because of the seam. And it appears overall that they're oversized very slightly, but it's enough to prevent them from being inserted into a revolver.
Okay. And do you know a gentleman by the name of Billy Ray?
I don't know him personally. We've communicated. Actually, no, excuse me. Let me back up. We did meet briefly. We met briefly. He owns a similar company providing weapons and props as well as dummy rounds and blanks to productions. I believe he's a set designer.
Did you reach out to Billy Ray with regard to supplying dummy rounds to the set of rust?
I did. Again, PDQ, everything we had slated in inventory was to be used on 1883. So we didn't have any 45 Colt dummy rounds. So I reached out to Billy Ray by text and asked him if he did have any in stock because they needed more.
And did he have any?
He did not. But what he did have, which appears on camera, and to anyone else, if you were to insert what he did have into a leather gun belt from 3 feet away, you wouldn't know what was in that gun belt. And so what he had was very specifically, he got back to me and said, I have 98 4440 dummy rounds and 42 3840 dummy rounds.
And were those provided to the set of rust?
He met up with Sarah Zachary, and that's how they ended up, I'm assuming, on set.
And are you the person that connected them so that Ms. Zachary could obtain the dummy rounds?
Yes.
So, to the best of your knowledge, did Billy Ray provide any 45 long Colt dummy rounds to the set of rust?
No, I mean, he was very specific. I mean, casually you'd say, well, I've got 3 boxes that'll work, but he went into greater detail.
Okay. And let me stop you there. And when you were talking about having a a 38-40 or a 44-40 dummy round in a gun belt, you said that the viewer wouldn't know what they were looking at.
That's correct.
And is that because they look very, very similar to 45 long Colt?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of dummy rounds, we understand that you provided some, and we've looked at those photos. You've testified that Billy Ray provided some, and you've explained that to us. Was there anyone else who provided 45 long Colt dummy rounds to the set of Rust?
Yes.
Who's that?
That was Hannah.
And if you know, where did Ms. Gutierrez say that she got the dummy rounds from that she took on to the set of Rust?
It was the same supply.
So what she asked for was a statement that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed made out of court about these rounds. Normally that's hearsay, but it's an admission or a statement by a party opponent, right? So she's saying something that is against her interests, at least in the context of this trial, which is where she got live rounds to bring them on set.
That she had gotten from Thale that she used on the old way.
And how do you know that?
There's comment, it was just conversation and text message.
She told you?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 175. It's my understanding that there is no objection to this, and I would ask permission to publish.
No objection.
States 175 is admitted. He may publish.
Sir, have you seen this before?
I have.
And what is this? It's a conversation. Who's participating in the conversation?
Sorry, I've broken my glasses. Yeah, it's a text conversation between myself and Hannah.
And what's the date of this conversation?
Again, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses. October, was it 5th?
Do you need some readers? I probably have 5 pairs.
The new prescription. I broke my
She's
glasses.
got her prop pairs.
It makes me feel nauseous. So let's see.
Does that help you?
Oh yeah, October 5th.
Okay. What are you and Ms. Gutierrez talking about here?
Well, we're talking about the let's see. Well, what specifically? There's a few dates in there.
Go ahead and just take a moment and review it, and then I'll ask you some questions about it.
Well, I'm asking her about how she was looking on, for leather.
And when you say leather, what do you mean?
It would be primarily gun belts, but it could also mean bandoliers as well. I don't recall that Rust had call for bandoliers. It was just primarily, gun belts and holsters. Each gun belt can hold up to 18 rounds of
Okay.
dummies.
So to kind of move through this in this text conversation, does Ms. Gutierrez indicate to you that she can't find any of the dummies?
Yeah, and she mentions, some of them are still in the belt and in the belts.
So hang on.
Yep.
When she says she can't find any of the dummies, what is your response?
Sorry about this. What happened to the dummy? Yeah, what happened to the dummy rounds from TOW, which is an abbreviation of the old way.
Okay. And what's her response?
Some of them are still in the belts.
Yeah. And then what do you explain to her? Something about
Why does he have his phone there?
dummy rounds don't get returned. What are you?
That's bothering me that he just looked at his phone. That shouldn't be there because he might be getting a communication from someone else that's related to his testimony. I don't like that. It was a very small glimpse. Keep it in your pocket, man.
You telling her, and let me know if you need me to. Do you need me to make it bigger?
I mean, I might as well just pull it up on my phone.
Don't do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just explaining, to her that she needs to, let me know, or as a normal course of business moving forward, now that she's no longer underneath her dad's wing, that if something gets lost or damaged on set, the production needs to pay for it.
You said that's an L&D. What does L&D mean?
Lost or damaged.
Okay.
And in this instance, she's just saying, essentially, yeah, they fall, just commonly, the dummy rounds fall out of gun belts for stunts, or even maybe picked up for souvenirs by extras or actors. Who knows?
Okay. And Ms. Gutierrez responds, and she actually, I think, confirms what you just said. Isn't that right?
Yes.
She says, you never mentioned this. I definitely lost some off of the belts during the action scenes.
Right.
She says maybe like 50 total. I'm not sure. And then she says, so
Put
I
your
have
phone
to round
away.
those up tomorrow and count these.
Yep. That was the conversation.
And then
If I'm defense, I'm objecting. Seeing. I mean, I don't know if he can see his phone in his hands right now, but I would be objecting because I'd be like, what what are you doing with your phone? The exhibit is right in front of you. You should not be looking at your phone. I don't care if you have a copy of it that appears to be a better quality image on your phone. You have a bigger screen in front of you. I'm very frustrated by this.
does she say to you, you both just send me out to do these things and don't teach me right? Shame on both of you.
Yes.
Okay. And you respond, you're a naughty child. I'll let Papa handle this one.
Right.
Were you joking?
Partially.
And what was her response?
So what if I need more? You guys freaking blow.
Okay. So based on State's Exhibit 175, was it your impression that Ms. Gutierrez was bringing dummy rounds that were already loaded into gun belts?
Absolutely. Not only that, but we were counting on it.
What do you mean you were counting on it?
Because everything else from PDQ was slated for 1883. In fact, some of it wasn't even manufactured yet. So there was just no inventory. And the only way that they were going to have, dummy rounds on Rust is by reaching out to other suppliers in the business, and they needed them straight away. And Billy Ray happens to be in Albuquerque. So that's a straightaway solution.
Okay, was it your understanding from that conversation with Ms. Gutierrez that the dummy rounds that she was providing to the set of Rust were left over from the old way?
Yes.
I'm going to take you to October 21st, 2021. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
And let me ask you, prior to October 21st of 2021, were you ever physically present on the set of Rust?
No.
When was the first date that you were physically present on the set of Rust?
It was when the sheriff's department executed the warrant on the prop truck.
And why did you need to be present for the sheriff's department to execute the warrant on the prop truck?
It wasn't that I needed to be, as much as I felt I wanted to be there to facilitate.
And how did you intend to facilitate?
But just to be available to answer questions that may have come up.
In addition to providing blank ammunition and some dummy rounds to the set of Rust, did you also provide firearms?
Yes.
Approximately how many firearms did you provide, if you recall?
Approximately 30.
And do you know where the 30 firearms that you provided were being stored?
They were being, yes, they were being stored on the prop truck, in the safe. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
And let me ask you specifically, did you provide to the set of Rust the Pieta 45 that became Mr. Baldwin's prop gun?
I did.
And where did you get that gun from?
Those guns came from Pieta's. Pieta's an Italian manufacturer, and they supplied, or they have a principal, and I think it's a single importer located in California, and I purchased them specifically for the Rust show directly from their facility in California.
And do you know when you purchased that gun, was it new or was it used?
Baldwin's gun was brand new, as were I believe it's 11 of the 12 revolvers that were rented to the Rust production were all brand new.
So I'm going to take you back to October 21st. On October 21st, did you find out that there was some sort of an injury that had taken place on set?
I did. I missed a call from Sarah Zachary, and quickly thereafter, she sent me a single word by text in all caps, emergency.
And when you received that text, what did you do?
I called her back within a few minutes.
Okay. And let me ask this. During that conversation, did you tell Sarah Zachary to do anything with any of the
What do you think he's going to say?
dummy rounds or firearms or anything
course not.
like that on set?
No, absolutely not.
After your conversation with Ms. Zachary, did you call Mr. Reed?
I did. I tried several times to get a hold of him.
And
by phone.
Were you ultimately able to get a hold of him?
I was. He returned, and I recall texting him as well, and he did finally return my call.
Okay, and I'm not going to ask you what he said during that call. During the filming of Rust, did you occasionally communicate with Ms. Gutierrez?
Yes.
And was there a time that you and Ms. Gutierrez had a disagreement?
The primary disagreement occurred on October 16th.
And what was the subject matter of that disagreement without saying what anyone said?
Subject matter related to an accidental discharge of a blank on the set of Rust.
Okay.
Negligent discharge.
After the disagreement that you had with Ms. Gutierrez on October 16th, did you, if you recall, did you speak to her again before this, between the 16th and the 21st?
No.
And why weren't you speaking to her? Was there anything that she did or said during the October 16th conversation that was upsetting to you?
Well, it was clear that she was emotional. She sent me a text message back that had a number of expletives associated with it, and so, you know, I just felt that she needed some space, and maybe an apology was due, and I was just going to give it some time.
An apology was due to who?
Well, I thought to me.
Okay. Understood. Sir, Did you provide any live ammunition to the set of Rust?
Of
No.
course not.
Did you ever give any live ammunition to Sarah
This is
Zachary?
the end of
No.
the direct.
Have you seen photos of the live ammunition that was found on the set of Rust?
I have.
Did you possess any ammunition that looked like that?
No.
At some point in time after the incident on the 21st, did you become aware that you were perhaps being blamed?
I started to sense that there was efforts to redistribute blame or the cause of this accident.
W- Was there a morning news show that you watched that?
Yeah, I'm gonna object.
This is going to be getting into some of the publicity around the trial. Defense probably doesn't want that to come in because the jury is going to be very curious about all that publicity and all that kind of stuff. So talking about specifics of what happened on a particular morning news show, et cetera, defense is going to want to try to keep that kind of stuff out. So good job keeping it to a sidebar. Yeah, Jerry, I know I pulled this up earlier, but this question about him basically making Sarah Zachary, who is not a trained a trained armorer, was not trained in these firearms at all, basically making her act like an armorer at one point, without any relevant experience. Yeah, that definitely is highly questionable, very highly questionable here. And I think that's one of the more damaging things that came out of his testimony. LK, write down, can't this be used by defense to say that he messed up the bullets on set? I mean, they are definitely going to try to, well, I would think that they would try to paint that on cross-examination. Jerry Roth, how do you think this guy is as a witness? It seems like he's exonerating Hannah and putting the blame on Sarah. I don't I don't know. I think this direct is not the most organized in terms of keeping people's focus, to be honest. And that's not necessarily his fault, but I will say I'm not particularly impressed with his direct. There have been some things here that are definitely very, very questionable. And I don't necessarily know that he's been exonerated by the investigation process in terms of like, did he or did he not bring live rounds on set? Chester Turkington, if Hannah appeals and wins, does that mean it goes back to trial again? It means she wins. At that point, double jeopardy does attach. So no new trial. Nicole Lechner, yikes, that could be grounds for mistrial having his phone. Also, Jerry Roth had a very similar question. Can a witness with their phone cause a mistrial? I don't think so. I mean, especially since no one seemed to object to it. No one seemed to mind. I don't know why no one sought
Mr.
to
Kinney,
put that out.
did you see a morning news show?
Okay.
I have seen one.
I'm talking about a morning news show where Mr. Bowles and Mr. Reed were the guests.
Yes, I do remember that.
And did anything about their statements on that morning news show cause you to believe that you were perhaps being targeted or blamed?
That's difficult to answer. It started to feel I don't know if that's an appropriate word. It started to feel, knowing Thale and having been friends with him for a few years at that point, I understood who he was and how much he loves his daughter. Um, so I felt like what was about to happen, that was the very beginning. And that was essentially to ultimately try to pin the live ammunition on the set of Rust, that somehow it came, through me.
Okay. And Mr. Kinney, um, did Ms. Gutierrez, with the assistance of Mr. Bowles, file a lawsuit against you?
They did. It's
This is something that I was thinking about over the weekend. I mentioned this in our members only live stream on Saturday. So those of you who are members who were able to make it, I mentioned this towards the beginning. This is something. This is a reason why I really started to revisit the idea that the defense has been really harping on those various other witnesses who have civil lawsuits, because I remembered. Um, like after the stream ended on Friday, or maybe on Saturday at some point, that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed also filed a civil lawsuit against Seth Kenney, and that one got dismissed. A civil lawsuit for money, all kinds of things that we can draw from it, right? The kinds of inferences that the defense has been wanting to draw from all these other witnesses, the prosecution is likely to now come in and draw those same inferences against Hannah Gutierrez-Reed through Seth Kenney. I was like, they're bound to ask about this, either at the very least when Seth Kenney testifies, and if Hannah Gutierrez-Reed decides to testify, then probably ask her about it too. So I was like, this is going to look bad when that comes up, because then the jury's going to be like, defense, what are you doing making such a big deal about this? Like, your own client did this. Like, your client looks worse to me. If they were convinced by the defense at the very least that made those witnesses look worse, this could end up making Hannah Gutierrez-Reed look worse as well.
give or take a couple of days, January 12th of 2022.
And when the lawsuit was filed against you, at that point in time, did you fully understand that you were being blamed?
At that point, it was quite clear.
Okay. Um, uh, what is the status of that lawsuit now?
Well, the complaint.
Okay. Well, very often when there is talk of a civil lawsuit having happened, talking about what has resulted from it, judges are often going to say that, like, oh, the fact that there's a settlement that came out of it, that might be too prejudicial. The fact that it has, resulted in a particular way, maybe it's too prejudicial, more prejudicial than it is probative. It could confuse the jury because the jury doesn't necessarily know what all of the claims are, how the burden of proof changes, what exactly is the standard that they are going for in that case. So I think I said charges, I meant claims of action, because it's a civil case. So there are ways in which those details of that civil lawsuit could confuse the jury if they just hear about, like, the ultimate conclusion without actually, like, knowing all of those other details. And so they could end up drawing some pretty prejudicial conclusions about them. And the defense definitely doesn't want to hear the ultimate, conclusion of that lawsuit, because it ended up getting dismissed, which is really bad for Hannah. So let's see if he wins the argument. They're going to go back and forth. The judge has said about previous, unrelated civil lawsuits that she has said you can't talk about, the fact that there was a civil lawsuit that ended up in settlement. I'm talking specifically about the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's boyfriend motorcycle incident, which I've referenced a couple times in this trial. It's gonna come up if she testifies, this whole incident. But then but the fact that there was a civil settlement that resulted from it, I don't know. I can't remember if the judge said whether or not they could say that there was a civil lawsuit that came out of it, but for sure no settlement. So yeah, like I said, this is going to be a bit of a fight between the two sides. We'll see what results. Let's see. Let's see. All right, let's fast forward here a bit. Are we coming back? No, they're still going back and forth. Okay.
Mr. Kinney, was that lawsuit later dismissed?
It was.
State one. See,
I'll pass the.
this is all the more reason that the defense should not have brought up all of the civil lawsuits of all those other people to like try to demonize them for their civil lawsuits. Just in terms of, I'm talking about in terms of like legal strategy of how things appear to the jury and how things are going to appear relatively between the two sides. That was, in my opinion, not a good strategy to do that, because partly because of this.
The witness.
Okay, cross-examination.
Cross-exam.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Kinney.
Good morning.
We've met over Zoom, but we've never officially met in person until this morning. Is that correct, sir?
It is.
Okay. Mr. Kinney, I want to walk you through, to start with, the 1883 set. And I think initially, Thel Reed had brought live rounds in a green ammo can. Is that correct?
That's correct. And specifically they were reloads, yes.
And these were reloads, and some percentage of them were Starline brass reloads. Is that correct?
Yes, I would just guess a good percentage, roughly 50% of the cases were Starline.
Now, I think you described previously that there were three types of bullet characteristics within those reloads. Is that correct, sir?
That is.
And will you tell the jury what three types of reloads there were?
So again, if we consider that a round of ammunition has four components, and commonly people say bullets, in what they were referring to is a total cartridge, right? But the bullet is actually the projectile, that single component, which essentially is flying towards whatever target. And Thale had brought 45 Colt reloads that were made up roughly of almost equal thirds, and it was a third what are called semi-wad cutters. The tip of that projectile is shaped exactly like a crayon. It has the exact shape of a newly unused crayon. Then there was another bullet profile, a truncated cone, which kind of has a spaceship look to it. And then there was the more common and typical found heavy grain bullet, which is, I think, probably what most people would assume is a bullet when they do that. And it just looks like a lump of clay. And there are slight variations to those shapes, but it could look like a human head, essentially, that was circular on all the way around the sphere.
Okay, kind of like a rounded kind of.
Yeah, and they even with a flat point on them, but they seem to be those round-nosed, flat point versions all seem to be roughly the same. I didn't see any variations in those, but honestly, I just don't recall. I just remember that there were three different type profiles. And the issue that we ran into was that they were shooting both lever action rifles and revolvers at the shooting range, and specifically, I grouped the each different bullet profile into separate boxes, and told the guys that were manning the prop master in a live fire armor that they had brought on, and they had an assistant as well, that the semi-wad cutters would not chamber in the lever action rifles. So best to use those in the revolvers, and ideally the truncated cone and then the rounded bullets, those could be used in the lever actions. And ultimately, somebody put a semi-wad cutter in one of the lever actions and jammed it up.
Okay, well, in any event, there's three types of bullet characteristics in those reloads that Reed gets from Joe Swanson, correct?
That from what I saw, yes.
Okay. Now you all have this live training offset. It's at a cowboy training camp in Texas in 1883, correct?
Correct. It was nowhere anywhere near a set. It was on, again, Taylor Sheridan had set up a private firing range, live fire area, and no filming was done at that point.
Okay, sir. Then after that set, you then retained the ammo can and the remainder of the live rounds that Dell had brought, correct?
No, I retained the Thale Reed, yeah, the reloads from Thale, but the ammo can was sent once the uh, the first I saw of what was the contents of the ammo can was actually at the firing range on Texas, and at that point we needed to know how many we had and what variety, because when I opened up the box, it was a jumbled, distribution of 3 different types of bullet profiles. So what I did is previously I'd gotten from Joe Swanson 10 boxes that were flat, brand new. They actually had to be assembled, and I loaded the contents from the green ammo box that Thale had brought into those white boxes. Those white boxes went up to the firing line as well as the empty ammo can, and the ammo can was being used for the spent brass.
Okay. So you did retain some of the reloaded live rounds after 1883 completed.
After the 1883 cowboy training camp, yes.
And those then made their way back to Albuquerque, you've said, to PDQ props, correct?
Yes.
And you don't know whether those returned, I think you've stated before October 21st. You said you were hazy on the date, right?
Yes.
But we do know that you came back to Albuquerque from 1883 on or about October 11th because you met with Sarah Zachary October 12th, correct?
Correct.
So when you came back, you brought dummy rounds from the set of 1883 to give to Sarah, correct?
Correct.
And those were 45 long Colt dummy rounds.
Correct.
Now, you had a whole group of dummies in 1883. How many do you think there were?
5,000.
Okay. So out of those 5,000, you brought some back from Miss Zachary. And at some point, you can't tell the jury when, those live rounds came back to your place.
I've never been able to identify the exact date.
Well, you also said on direct, they were delivered back. Let me get to the words you used. They were offloaded from your Sprinter van and got moved back to Albuquerque in the bathroom. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, when you said got moved, isn't that you who moved them back?
Yes.
Okay. So in reality, you drove them back from 1883 and you can't remember that date at all.
No. I ballpark it, but it's not accurate. I have an idea of within months or two, or even I can't tell you, because I made at least 2 trips back and forth from Texas to Albuquerque, California, back again. I've just not been able to narrow it down.
Did you ever go back and when you were sitting down with Hancock in one of these times and sit down with the calendar and try to look at your trip receipts, look at any kind of credit card, try to figure that out?
Yes, repeatedly. I've probably tried 3 to 5 times to see if I can come up with a picture of either the space in PDQ space in Albuquerque, something that would indicate when I had brought those back. I've just been unable to.
Okay. Now, you said that you brought these back, stored them in the bathroom, and you indicated that could be a concerning situation if live rounds are stored in the same place as dummies. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. And the reason why you said that on direct is that dummies are made to look identical in a lot of respects to live rounds.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you also had within your place blanks, correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay. Why would you store live ammo at PDQ at all?
Well, if you got, self-defense ammunition, um, it's Albuquerque after all, and that's enough right there. And I deal with weapons that should not be out on the streets, and I'll do what I have to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, that's an unfortunate reality. So there is self-defense ammunition, and the remnants of the 1883 cowboy training camp was there. And I, again, don't know the date that I brought them back.
Okay. Now, you keep self-defense ammunition. It's because it's a dangerous town. I think that's what you're saying. And you also keep weapons we've seen in pictures that were kind of out in the open. Looked like they were cases. You recall that?
From the evidence photos?
Yes.
Well, you're seeing what I want anybody to see that would break in if, because again, it's Albuquerque. If somebody were break in, what are they going to go after first? That's what it's set up as. You don't see in the evidence photos belt-fed machine guns, any machine guns, or a lot of other things that were there that are no longer there.
Okay, so you had belt-fed machine guns too?
Oh, yeah.
And machine guns at this shop as well?
Yes.
Okay. So you wanted people to see and let me just show you Defendant's Exhibit L14. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So Neptosis, he wasn't referring to the set. He's referring to PDQ Prop and Arms, where he's got a lot of firearms and things like that. Honestly, to me, that reasoning kind of makes sense, so that he can defend his stuff in case somebody comes in and tries to steal
Thank you.
the firearms that he says
I'm gonna
shouldn't be
show
on
you
the streets.
Defendant's, L14. And if you could describe, is this a picture inside PDQ Props?
It is.
Okay, sir, can you tell the jury these items, what type of firearms those are?
Well, they look to be long arms, obviously because of the length, but what's inside those gun socks is a mystery. It could be anything from replicas, non-functioning shotguns. Could be anything.
So these were there on October 21st. Are you telling the jury you don't know what was inside those socks?
Definitely not. I have hundreds of guns.
Okay, are these hundreds of guns inside PDQ Props?
Yeah, as well as replica and rubber as well. And replicas they look exactly like a gun, but they're not. And if that's not how do we know that's October 21st? First of all, that shouldn't be.
Not October 21st. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting my date. Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Okay.
This was the month after in November.
This is search warrant photos.
Yes.
Yeah.
I apologize. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was in November. And Mr. Kinney, what is this are these some rounds on the ground here?
Everything in this room are going to be blanks or dummy rounds.
Okay, but and I see them kind of laying in bags on the ground. Is that correct?
Yes.
So did you have any kind of, oh, first of all, before I ask you that, you have a lot of boxes stacked up on the shelves here. Do you see that?
Yes, and that shelf holds entirely blanks.
Okay. Did you have any sort of written inventory system for all your boxes? And
occasionally I would go through and make a list of what I had. It was casual. What do I need? Joe Swanson would say, hey, I'm running off a batch of 223 blanks and or 9mm, whatever it was. And if I was on the road, it would be helpful to kind of have an idea about that. But there's no spreadsheet of inventory that I kept.
okay, and when you say casual, was it written on a piece of paper?
It was 8.5 by 11. I would end up, with 2 or 3 8.5 by 11s, because it's not only, we're not just talking about, 9mm, right? We're talking about 9mm that is going to be what we use in the industry, anything from a solid plug load. And in a solid plug load, you can have 10 variations. And then we have 8 flash, quarter flash, half flash, full flash. So you had to know what your inventory is by memory for the most part. And occasionally, if inventory got too high in one area, I'd say, well, definitely don't, if Joe says, hey, do you need any of this? Respond no, because it just doesn't make sense from a small business standpoint.
And you said inventory through memory. I'm going to show you defendant's L16. It's just one example. Were you able to remember at any given time each number of each of those types of boxes?
Well, if I'm handling it on a daily basis, yes. Deficiencies mostly.
Well, and for example, when you have to invoice, like the Russ said, do you have any procedure that kind of tells you how you're going to invoice that?
Typically what I'll do is very quickly, usually movie productions, television productions are last minute. And oftentimes the invoicing comes a week or two after the service has been provided. And so oftentimes I'll quickly jot down what it is that's being sent, take a picture of it. And oftentimes things go, if they're shipped, everything goes overnight. So it's a last minute kind of business.
Okay.
Seems like all the
And
more
then
reason to keep
the
everything
approach.
organized.
I'll show this. So I'm going to approach and show you defendants EE and FF. And I'll ask you if you recognize these two documents.
I do.
Can you readers?
No, that's okay. Yep.
What are those documents?
This is an invoice made out to Russ Production with Sarah Zachary here as well.
And can you look in the back of the one you just looked at and see what the sticker number is on the back of the page? Just flip it over. Yeah, that little sticker, FF, does that say that?
That says FF. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just read for the record from FF, and what is EE? The other exhibit? No, I was just going to ask to move them in, Your Honor. Just have them identify EE.
Okay. So FF is an invoice for blank ammunition as well as dummy rounds.
Okay, and is that your invoice, sir?
Yes, it is.
And is it the same for EE? If you could take a look at that.
And this EE is an invoice for guns, replicas, rubber guns, gun bags, and socks.
Okay, and not get into the contents. You just recognize that, do you not?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
I would move for the omission of those two exhibits.
EE and FF are admitted. You may publish.
So there might be a question about admitting these documents in. Aren't they hearsay? Because for example, the police report can't be admitted as evidence because it's hearsay. Well, in order to admit a statement or a document, technically a statement, in at trial, it has to fall under one of the numerous hearsay exceptions, and one of them is business records. So if he recognizes it as one of his business records, it's an invoice, it's something that he regularly does in the course and scope of his business. This is an example of his typical invoice. This is going to be allowed in as a business record, and that is an explicit exception under the hearsay rule. So I just wanted to explain that really quick so that folks are on track for that.
Defendants.
So Mr. Kenny, I'm first going to show you defendants EE, and you were just telling the jury Can you just summarize this and don't go into every item?
Sure. This is the gun replica and rubber invoice to the Rust production from PDQ.
Mr. Bowles, hold the exhibit real quick. Can we approach them?
Yes.
Okay. Let's fast forward a bit while they sidebar.
If you can just.
Whoops. Let's go back just a little bit.
Mr. Kenny, if you can just summarize that for the jury.
So that invoice is from PDQ to Rust production for firearms, replica firearms, as well as rubber firearms.
Okay, and now I want to show you, and this is what you, and the one we just saw, this is what you supplied to Rust, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now I want to show you defendant's FF. And if you can summarize this document.
It's a invoice from PDQ to Rust production for blanks, blank ammunition, as well as dummy rounds.
Okay, and then if I want to show you the second page of that. And what does that say in the second page?
It says dummy rounds, 4440/45 LC long Colt and 12 gauge.
So is this the line where you invoiced for those 45 long Colt rounds?
It is.
Okay. And so you put this together in a group with the other types, correct?
Yes.
And the numbers on the left column. So you start at your dummy rounds, 44, 40, 45. Then there's a number 200. Is that the quantity?
That is the quantity.
And then the price per item is right next to that. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now these dummy 45 and other dummies, did you rent these to Rust?
I did. What was listed there is not inclusive of actually what was provided to Seth. There were some, as I recall, there were some 44 Henry dummy rounds, possibly some 4570. I don't recall exactly.
So were there other invoices?
No.
Okay. So there were certain items that you did not invoice for.
That's correct.
Okay. And did that also include what's called primed cases?
No, prime cases would not be in the dummy round line of the invoice. That would be listed out separately, because one is a consumable, the other one is a rental, and prime cases would be a consumable.
And I want to talk a little bit about that, but you provided Sarah Zachary some primed cases for Rust, correct?
Not that I recall. I mean, I'd have to look at the invoice.
What is a primed case?
A prime case is simply that. It's a ammunition case that has a primer without gunpowder. Typically, Joe Swanson crimps the end because what happens is that they're too long. If he doesn't crimp the end, they're too longer to actually be functional in a revolver. And they're simply, like a loud cap gun when they go off. They're good for training. They're good for around horses and kids. And certain armorers will rig them up in theater as well. Live theater will use them with talcum powder for an effect with minimal noise and also for close proximity.
Do you recall telling Detective Hancock when you interviewed with her that you had given a number of prime cases to Sarah, and it will be interesting to see what color primers they have?
No, I don't recall that.
If I showed you your interview transcript, would that refresh?
It would help. Yeah.
Okay. It's page 32. sir. If I can have that back. Did you indeed tell Detective Hancock that you had given a number of primed cases to Sarah?
Well, it's interesting because it says prime cases, and that I would have said primed. I don't
Oh,
remember say
that's a
prime
cop out.
cases. It just sounds like you're ordering some off of Amazon. So
This
I
sounds like
don't
he's
recall that
BSing.
conversation. I don't even know what I'm referring to in that conversation.
Well, do you recall that there was discussion about those being there and that you looked for a picture to show Hancock?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall stating that chances are they'll all have the same color primer?
This conversation, I just don't remember the particulars of this conversation with Detective Hancock.
But do you recall at all, regardless of the conversation, that Sarah Zachary had primed cases on the set of Rust?
If they're on the invoice and it's a dummy, or excuse me, it's a blank round, and I would include a primed case in a blank round invoice, because again, it's a consumable. I would not be surprised if they got prime case blanks, let's call them.
Well, sir, don't you know that? Don't you know you provided that to Sarah Zachary?
No, it was 2.5 years ago.
But this was traumatic event for everybody. You talked to you remember that, don't you?
I remember it being traumatic.
No,
Yes,
you
absolutely.
you remember providing those cases because you discuss it for 5 pages in this.
No, I don't remember.
Do you recall during this conversation as well that you called a man named Troy Teskey?
I've called Troy Teskey a number of times in the last 6 years.
I'm asking you specifically, during the interview with Detective Hancock, November 1st, do you recall that you called Troy Teskey?
In the interview room, yes, with Detective at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, yes.
Yes, because he was at lunch. You called him. You were trying to reach him.
Yes, now I understand what you're talking about.
Okay. And do you recall also calling Joe Swanson as you were sitting down with the detective?
I do.
And do you recall when you asked Joe Swanson whether he had put these in boxes, how many rounds he had made in total? He said about 700 is what you said. Do you recall saying that he had made about 700 rounds?
I have a vague recollection of the conversation with Detective Hancock, yeah.
And as you're talking to Joe Swanson and you ask him if they were in the box or the green ammo can, do you recall he's on the phone with you and you're asking if they were in the green ammo can and you say, shh.
Okay. So let's fast forward to the sidebar. Oop, too far.
Okay, Mr. Kenny, do you recall you said, as you're on the phone, shit, shit, shit. I'm like, oh God, well, still trying, down. You recall saying that?
Vaguely, yes.
You also recall saying, you said it twice. You said, shit, shit, shit. Well, she still didn't do her effing job. Do you recall saying that?
That sounds like me.
Okay. So when you find out, and I don't want to get into what Mr. Swanson told you, but when you find out whatever you find out on the phone, you say shit, shit, shit twice. Why did you say that?
I think I was worried that it was going to be some of these rounds that Thale had given to Troy Teskey and had been using, to shoot, right? Shooting live rounds, that somehow they migrated in in some of Thale's leather, or through Hannah in some way, and that again we were going to be here saying Joe Swanson live ammunition when he's primarily 99.9% of the time he just provides movies and television shows with blanks and dummy rounds, and that's an uncomfortable situation for Joe Swanson.
So you just gave a long explanation, and you just kind of tried to blame Hannah in that, didn't you just now?
How did I do that?
Well, you gave the implication that you were worried that this was going to be some that Bill had and Troy was shooting. And again, that's to try to link it to Hannah, isn't it?
No,
Okay.
just telling you my thought process at that point, trying to figure out where did the Rust live ammunition come from, and was it going to point back to Joe Swanson?
Okay. And do you recall on July 11th, 2023, you interviewed with myself and Miss Morrissey? You call that, sir?
Yeah, the Zoom meeting. Yes, I recall that.
Andrew?
Yeah, his explanation for the shit comment is not the most convincing to me. Anyway, folks might disagree.
Recall when I asked you the same question, shit, why did you say shit? You said, I don't know. And that was the extent of your answer. You recall that?
Yes.
So back in July 11th, 2023, your memory, would you agree with me, would be fresher to that time frame when you said it than it would be now?
Well, not if I had reviewed things or something else jogged my memory of that event, or because it was an emotional time, and that I found that largely when things are emotionally charged, there kind of needs to be some kind of gateway between the present and recollecting how I felt and the way things were at that point in time.
And I understand, but would you agree with me? You gave a different answer on July 11th. I don't know than you do today.
I don't know if I don't know is really an answer, other than at that moment in time after us discussing it, I hadn't thought about saying shit 4 times in an interview with a detective.
The rounds, again, that went to 1883 came back at some point to your place. Again, some of those reloaded rounds from Joe Swanson were Starline brass.
So the 1883 Cowboy Camp, training camp, just to be specific, yes, some of those Thale Reed, Joe Swanson reloads came back to PDQ in Albuquerque.
And as well, some of your dummy rounds also were Starline brass, correct?
Correct.
And they had nickel primers?
Correct.
Okay. And the live rounds found on set that were Starline brass also had nickel primers, correct?
On the set of Rust?
Yes, sir.
From the evidence photos, yes, those were nickel primers.
As well.
Yes.
Okay. And in addition to providing replica firearms, did you provide rubber firearms to the set?
To the set of Rust, yes.
Okay. Did you provide over 3,000 rounds of ammo?
I don't know what the total of, if we're referring to
blanks.
Blanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the total is of blanks to Rust. I've never totaled it out. Well, other than the invoice, that would have been the only time.
Okay. When you would get a request from Sarah Zachary for additional rounds that were needed, would she come pick those up from you at your place?
I think once the initial supply of blanks and firearms were provided to Sarah, there was only one other occasion that I can recall Sarah coming and getting anything for Rust from me, which was on October 12th.
Okay. And do you recall Sarah and Hannah coming before Rust started to your place?
I do.
And at that time, didn't you give Hannah her leathers as well as firearms and ammunition
Yeah, vaguely recall that, yeah, that she got that done.
Because in fact, Hannah had mailed you the leathers back from the old way at the end of that set. Recall that?
Yeah, she had shipped everything from Montana to me in Texas.
And so when you received those in Texas and the leathers and everything else, you brought them back to P2Q Props?
That's correct. The leathers were in the same box. They never got pulled out. The replica firearms did get pulled out, but the rest of the leathers remained in the box.
Okay, sir. Then you gave that to Sarah and Hannah for their use on the rest set. Is that fair to say?
Well, whatever she was going to do with it was up to Hannah and Thale.
Okay. But do you know they got used on the rest set?
I don't know that. I can assume that's where that leather went to.
Okay. Now I want to ask you some questions about the dummy rounds that you answered earlier. You did indicate that dummies that do not rattle can be dangerous. Is that right?
Dummy rounds that do not rattle are not dummy rounds to me.
Okay. And I think you've said because it is dangerous when an armor is trying to figure out, maybe in a high-speed environment, maybe things are going on, you're trying to distinguish between a live round and a dummy, and it will not rattle. It doesn't rattle. Didn't you describe that as being a dangerous situation?
Well, certainly, because it's like a firearm that you can't check is unloaded. You have to assume that it's loaded or that the round is live and it's not a dummy round.
Yes, sir. And you also stated that you would not source those type of rounds like Denix rounds that do not rattle, right?
That's correct.
And it's one of the things you said that you would not be in favor of having a mixture of dummies, some that rattle, some that don't. That's a dangerous situation, isn't it?
Well, it's I work with prop crews a lot. They're not specialists, they're not armorers, but they are charged with the responsibility of having gun belts and dummy rounds on set. And if they get the idea that dummy rounds don't necessarily have to rattle, bad precedent, deadly precedent.
It sets a deadly precedent. And on this set on Rust, you're aware that there were those types of a mixture of different types of dummy rounds, are you not?
Well, I wasn't aware of that. Because,
well, you weren't before, but you are now, having reviewed the pictures.
Yeah, the Denix round is a costume round that doesn't rattle.
So after you reviewed the pictures from set, you're now aware that there was a dangerous mix of types of dummies, some that rattled, some that didn't.
Well, a Denix round is not dangerous. It sets a dangerous precedent.
Okay.
And
I'm not saying you can fire it. I'm just saying, in your words, it can set a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, yes, it's not an ideal situation. Not at all.
Okay, sir, I want to talk about your interactions with Detective Hancock in this case. When the case started, do you recall you had a meeting or call with her maybe the same day as the shooting incident?
No, I don't. With Detective Hancock?
Yes.
On October 21st? Don't recall it at all. I don't think it happened.
Okay. Do you recall that on the course of time after that shooting incident, you called Detective Hancock over 40 times?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Do you think it might?
Sorry, real quick. Ahmed Abu Ghush, thanks so much for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. Okay, sorry. That's all. Let's continue on.
Have been higher than that?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. And during that time, you're sharing information with her. She's sharing information with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And doesn't she share you materials from the investigation at times?
The first time that I think she showed me anything was when they were executing the search warrant on the prop truck. She was showing me, I think they were black and white, grainy photos.
Okay.
That was the first time I saw anything.
Now, do you recall providing Detective Hancock some of the live rounds before the execution of the search warrant?
I did.
Okay. So you provided her some, and was that in a bag, or how did you give those to her?
Well, interestingly enough, they came from that jammed lever action rifle, and they happened to be the semi-wad cutter live rounds. They were in a small Benelli shotgun choke bag, and I had written on there in black ink live, and there were between 5 and 7, I believe.
Real quick, and also Skip Bargielski, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club.
That I gave her.
Okay. And you volunteered those to her, and she took them. Then they came to search after that. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, there was a month time frame or so, roughly, between the shooting incident and that search of your place.
Yeah, I believe it was over a month because it was after Thanksgiving. So yeah, over a month.
Did you have any inkling or thought that they were going to come search?
No, not at all.
Even though you had been in contact with the detective and other people before that, you knew they were investigating?
I knew they were investigating. I had no reason to believe that they would be executing a search warrant on my business.
Now, did you provide your DNA to Detective Hancock?
No, I did offer it though.
You offered it?
Yes,
And they did not take you up on that?
that's correct.
And they did not take your fingerprints either, did they?
Well, my fingerprints are in the system already through if you're a federal firearms licensee, that's just part of the licensing is that your fingerprints go into the digital federal system.
And I understand that, sir, but my question was, did they take your fingerprints?
Again, no.
Okay. Well, they didn't take it the first time. That was somebody else.
That's true.
Okay. Now I want to ask you a different topic. After this, you were asked on direct if after this October 16th accidental discharge, you had had an argument with Miss Gutierrez-Reed. Do you recall that?
By text message, yes.
Okay. And you recall after that you wanted to fire Miss Gutierrez-Reed?
It wasn't that I wanted her fired because it wouldn't be for me to fire her. She can tell me to go to hell all day long, and it wouldn't make a difference to the Rust production. It doesn't, I've got 5 sisters and 2 daughters. I'm used to it.
Another evasive answer.
So if Rust production is happy, and they were, Sarah Zachary said she's a great armor.
But did you want her to be fired?
The defendant, Hannah,
That's the
she
question.
sent me the text message that the director had sent her after a big shootout on blank ammo shootout, big shootout.
And Mr. Kinney, my question was pretty simple. And
Okay.
Let me ask it again.
Go ahead.
You just testified that you did not want to that you did not want to fire Hannah?
That you
Is that
didn't
your testimony?
want her to be fired. That's maybe a more accurate way of asking it.
It's not that I wanted her fired. She was doing a horrible job at props. That was an issue.
Okay, you answered my question, and I just want to know, it's a real...
I had mixed feelings about it, and I think that's why, in fact, I reached out to 2 common friends with Fail saying this is the situation,
Okay, well, did you recall in your interview on November 1st stating she was just being an idiot? I wanted Sarah to get rid of her.
Collectively, yes. I mean, even now, frustrated with her, but at the same time, understand what she's up against. So it's a mixed bag of emotions, and ultimately was not my call.
My question was did you remember stating that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's what I asked. Now, do you also recall in the July 11th interview stating, well, I wasn't going to work with her again in the future? So you wanted her fired.
He's going to give another long, shifty answer.
I just, again, it was, there were some mixed emotions and in the situation. If I really wanted her fired, I could have gotten her fired.
But then he earlier said
Yes,
he
you're
was
right.
like, it's not really my place to do
You
it.
could have gotten her fired. You could have talked to somebody on set. Who was your contact on set?
It would have been
Sarah Zachary?
well, Gabrielle Pickle was actually Angel Nijum was my first contact with production at Rust. And then it was Gabrielle Pickle, line producer, unit production manager, Ro Walters. Those would have been the ones to fire her. Sarah Zachary she was willing to work with Hannah and get the movie finished.
And
Council approach.
yes,
Oh, she might be talking about lunch, asking him. She's probably going to ask him like how long for the rest of his cross examination, because we are bumping into lunchtime. Doctor Who 8675309. How much does Seth's shifty shenanigans hurt the state? I mean, to be honest here, I was really highly anticipating his testimony.
Why don't we see you back here at
Okay. Yeah,
1
it's about
o'clock?
lunch.
Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court.
All rise.
So, yeah, I was really anticipating his testimony, and for some reason, it's kind of felt like largely a big nothing burger. I don't know why that woman has a Swiffer. That's very interesting. I'm sure it's not actually a Swiffer, but I'm definitely wondering what that is. Oh, maybe that's a thing to put her laptop or a tablet on there or something. Anyway, so it's been a whole big lot of nothing burger. I mean, even his cross examination, I was expecting like I don't know, something a little bit more with a little bit more pop. Um, and it's kind of just been like I said, a really big nothing burger on both ends here. Daniel Roselle earlier wanted to know, has the defense opted for less time for their case in chief, or am I counting the time wrong? So it's not so much about time. I think, well, I mean, time, yes, but I think it's more about witnesses that they plan to call. They can choose, they have a certain amount of discretion as to, who they want to call, who they don't want to call, how much time they anticipate taking with each witness. And so all of that gets calculated into how long they need for their case in chief. Court is going to keep all of that considered. Um, and so in determining how long the trial is going to be ultimately. So I guess it's just they figure a lot of the witnesses that they would have wanted to call themselves are going to be called by the state. It's not unheard of for the defense to just have a shorter case in chief than the prosecution, because a lot of the people that they, like I said, that they want to talk to or have already been called. So you don't need to recall them. You don't need to call them in your case in chief. So yeah. Howie K, does Seth have immunity, or can he still be charged? I believe he's in a similar situation with Sarah Zachary. I don't know for sure, but I'm fairly positive that he probably has immunity. Let's see here. Benji, the state is starting to lose me with too many testimonies. I bet they're losing the jury as well. I think yeah, this has been, we're starting to get really inundated with a lot of testimony. A lot of it is feeling pretty similar. I'm still not quite certain why they brought in Miss Poppel again. There's I feel like we didn't get anything really new from her testimony that we didn't already get before, other than the fact that the defense decided to bring in some exhibits of their own on cross-examination, which they previously didn't do. Today's the first day that we've seen any defense exhibits at all, which has been just pretty surprising to me. Let's see here. Any other questions? All right. I think that's about it. Ray wants to know, do you think HGR is guilty or not? I think that there definitely are some issues for the state here, is particularly with regards to the investigation that they chose to run with. It's an issue because it just looks like there's holes and there's gaps. For me personally, though, the most important part is what Hannah Gutierrez-Reed did in terms of checking the ammunition, leading up, like on the day of the incident. Like you can even ignore all of the other incidents and everything else that happened. What did she do on the day of the incident? Did she do what she needed to do as an armorer? And the defense is pointing to a lot of other people that made mistakes, a lot of people that may or may not have interfered with her ability to do her job. COVID may or may not have interfered with her ability to do her job, but is that enough of an excuse? I think, to me, there's been enough testimony that if she had been a bit more assertive, if she had been a bit less agreeable, then she could have potentially, you know, made it a point to do certain things to ensure that things were done properly. If she can't be in the in the church when they are using that firearm, make sure it's just not loaded at all before you hand it off to anyone. Like just there didn't need to be rounds in there in the first place. I don't know if she, maybe she does testify and then she testifies that she was instructed to put rounds in there. Um, and yeah, I don't know, but there's enough there that for me, I feel like there is criminal negligence on her part in terms of not checking the gun properly, not using the redundancy that she should have used in terms of checking the rounds in the firearm, before lunch, after lunch, if it's been out of her sight and out of her possession, she really needed to check it again. Of course, we are saying all of this, with the benefit of hindsight. I'm no gun expert, but to me that does seem to make sense. It's like, you measure twice, cut once, right? Before you hand it off to anyone else, before you allow it to be used in anything, you've got to check it. You've got to check it multiple times. You've got to check it as many times as possible until you are absolutely certain that you would put your own life on the line, on that question of whether or not it is safe. So for me personally, I see a lot of the points that the defense is making here. They are making some very valid points, especially about the investigation and the other stuff like that. Seth Kenney is shady as hell, in my opinion. So is Sarah Zachary. Like the dummy rounds that she threw away that everyone's just assuming are dummy rounds. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't go along with that. To me, it's like the rounds that might be dummy rounds, the rounds that are dummy according to Sarah Zachary. Nobody knows because no one has verified that. That's an issue for the state. But all of that said, if you really boil it down to what this case really is simply about, I still lean guilty. Let's see here. There also was there was a question from Pamela C. Do you think you start losing the jury when you ask lots of questions? It depends on how calibrated those questions are, right? It depends on how pointed those questions are. Are they asking, questions that the jury really wants to know, needs to know? Then not necessarily. You can have a long direct examination or cross examination, I guess, that is still helpful to the jury and still it keeps them engaged. But more often than not, when you have long testimony, it's because there's somehow a lot of filler in there. And with a witness like Seth Kenney, it sounds like he likes to talk. He likes to give very long-winded answers that, by the time you get to the end of the sentence, where did that even begin? What was that in the middle? I'm not really sure where we are anymore. It's easy to get distracted during his testimony. And a lot of that has to do with his manner of speaking. And part of that can also come with training by the attorneys that are asking him questions, right? Like just asking him for a little bit simpler answers. So yeah, but his there was the question about his shadiness on the stand. Yeah, I mean he is the state's witness, right? So of course that can definitely um cloud things for the state, right? But I think at the end of the day, his testimony to me just feels like a really big nothing burger. for me personally. But I mean, that also could be because, like I said, for me, the issue kind of comes down to the simplest question, which is, did Hannah Gutierrez-Reed do what she needed to do on October 21st, 2021? And does she have a reason, a good reason for not doing the checks that she should have done? And I haven't seen enough here showing me that she does have a good enough reason for it. So those are my thoughts. All right. Okay. So we are on lunch. Oh gosh, I forgot to listen for when she said we will be back. Let me see here. I got so distracted by that cipher. Sorry.
Actually, Angel Nijum was my first
I'm
contact
playing
with
this here.
with production at
The
Rust, and then
the
it was
answer of
Gabrielle Matter.
when.
She was
And yes.
Okay, so approaching. Okay.
Why don't we see you back here at 1 o'clock?
Okay.
Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here
Okay.
in court.
So 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock it is. All right. Now with that, I'm going to end the stream. We are going to this is going to redirect directly into the afternoon stream. So we've got about 45 minutes until the next stream ish. I think that 1 o'clock is what she's asking the jury to be back for. So it's probably going to start a little bit after that, but I'm going to be prepared to start at 1 p.m. Mountain time. So 1 p.m. / 3 p.m. East Coast time. Do whatever calculations you need to do to figure out what that time zone is, or what that is in your time zone. And then like I said, it's going to redirect, but if you somehow don't get picked up by the redirect, I'm going to post on the community tab, the link. I'm going to post on all the other social media stuff about the afternoon stream. So thank you all so much for joining me. This has been a fascinating case. Like I said, whether you are watching on replay or live, whether you're in the chat and giving us your thoughts, or in the comments, I appreciate that. Even if you're just lurking, I love that you're watching with us. And thanks again to the mods for always helping to make sure that we keep within YouTube's guidelines, even when we're quoting the things that are that are being said in the courtroom. I know sometimes that's a little annoying that we have to like censor ourselves with symbols and things like that. But I do appreciate folks that are willing to do that to make sure that YouTube doesn't punish us for being extra colorful. All right, folks. Okay. With that, like I said, ending the stream, and I hope to see you all for the afternoon stream when we get to see more wonderful Seth Kenny, and then maybe we see the end of the state's case in chief today. Maybe we hear from Halyna Hutchins' widower. I would anticipate he's probably going to be the last witness, because that would be a very emotional way to anchor the testimony, if that's how they choose to go. But who knows? They've made some decisions here as to like the ordering of witnesses here that I don't necessarily understand, strategically anyway, to include Seth Kenny being like at the end. So anyway, okay. That's it. I'll see you guys in the afternoon, I hope. Okay. See you guys.